People are divided into larks and owls. Amanda wasn't divided into anything. She was 100% herself. Totally unique, polarized. Life molded her into a lark, made her get up at the crack of dawn. School, institute, work. She studied, worked, but every morning her only wish was not to get up, to lie down for another 3 hours. Her worst enemy was the alarm clock. It's ringing, the bastard. That's who I'd slap without regret at night. Better reading, thinking, working. Trying to go to bed early was a total disaster. Can't sleep. She gets almost hysterical because she can't sleep, and she has to get up soon. Mornings have never been good or wise for her. Getting up, taking a shower, eating breakfast all by force. Her husband says something. She doesn't have the energy to listen or respond. He's angry that he's being ignored. Amanda is losing her temper. How many times she asked him not to bother her in the morning, to let her wake up. By the time she got to work, she was awake. I'm good to go. You're lucky you have a job you love. If every morning was like hard labor, there'd be no life at all. My friend Barbara used to wail every time. I hate this job. When I think that it's a lifelong job, I feel bad. Imagine. They gather in the morning, and the first thing they do is assess who's wearing what. God forbid you stand out. They're going to whip you. Then they start complaining that they're overworked and try to take it out on each other. I try not to get involved with anyone. So all the work is dumped on me. And it's easier for me to work for everyone than to deal with these nerves. I drag myself to work in the morning and try to get out early in the evening. You wanted to change jobs, didn't you? Amanda asked. I did. But remember how I chose my profession? I didn't have any aspirations at all. I went where my mom said I should go. Turns out finance and accounting weren't my thing, but I have no other profession. No matter how many times I change, it's the same thing. You what? There's a lot of work, and I'm ready to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I envy you to the teeth, Barbara said. They say envy is destructive. I've already fallen to pieces, but envy never goes away. That's when Julian envied herself, as if she'd gotten a lucky ticket. If Barbara was pushed into the profession by her mother, Amanda took the path of least resistance. She dismissed medical, polytechnic, and law institutes at once. She wouldn't get in. There was a big competition. The pedagogical institute remained. The faculty also did not cause doubts. Philological, the only school subject that Amanda adored, literature. She would be a teacher of Russian language and literature. She studied easily and with interest. It seemed that she did everything right. After 6 months of working at the school, she began to doubt the correctness of her choice. It turned out that children in such large numbers irritate her intention to direct humanity and the person of students on the right path with the help of Russian classics. No one needs it. They do not read at all. All the good, eternal will not get. It was left to monotonously hammer in the rules of the Russian language and coach them to pass exams. No one pushed her into the profession. She chose it herself. And the result is the same as Barbara's. She kicks herself to work, and sadly thinks that life is boring and work is hateful. One day she got so angry at herself for putting up with it, and not even trying to change it, that she decided I should run away from school. Anywhere. It won't be worse. The opportunity came as soon as Amanda decided to change her life by all means. Apparently, fate was standing under the door and opened it as soon as Amanda slammed the previous one. Summer began. The school year ended. She got her vacation pay. Instead of joy, it was anxiety. I made a vow to myself. I'm not going back to school in August. I kept saying it to myself like a mantra. I'd get my resolve, get euphoric, a new life begins. Then I'd get this hopeless sadness. What new life? Who's waiting for you? What do you know? What can you do? She knows nothing but Russian. And with skills even worse, can't even teach. I could try to get a job as an administrator, but it's hardly a dream job. She wanted something interesting, creative, but nothing concrete came to mind. Amanda was angry with herself. She's a mess. She can't even decide what she wants. Dreaming, and in the fall go to school, and again will begin self-abuse and weeping over his worthless life. Get a grip, make at least one step. I did everything. I have correct speech, good diction, and a pleasant timbre. Where to with all that? Amanda decided that all that goodness could come in handy on the radio. She realized that there you also need a quick reaction, the ability to improvise. She hoped it was something she could learn. I went to the local TV and radio station and said, "I want to work for you." Weren't they surprised? Apparently, such broadcast stars often come to them. They took her to the studio, let her read the text, wrote it down, and sat her down in a corner to wait for the verdict. Amanda sat on pins and needles, howling with excitement. Turns out, reading a text into a microphone is really scary. What made you think she could? Probably embarrassed, stuttering, stammering, they will not take. A big fat man flew into the studio. Amanda was stunned, a local celebrity, TV star, journalist Dylan. "Gentlemen, for the love of God, help me out. Gentlemen, I need a female voice. I need a woman's voice now. We're having a real bad time with women. Roberta's in Moscow on a course. Miranda and Penelope are on vacation. We have to pass the program, and there's no one to sound it. William, do you have anyone at the moment? Dylan, you're married for the first time. You couldn't have done it beforehand, could you? I've got girlfriends who've gone to sea too. Michelle's on the air. Amanda will be here in about 3 hours." William was just listening to Amanda's tape, her voice sounding softly in the studio. Dylan was rushing around the cramped room, clutching at consoles, dropping chairs and knocking over microphones. "Careful, elephant. You're going to blow up the whole studio. Shit, I'm burning." "Who's that? Did you record it now?" "It's not bad. It's a good voice, but it's a little stiff. No experience at all. Give me the headphones." Dylan put the headphones on, listened. "William, are you drunk? William, are you drunk? Pretty good. Where is she?" "Sitting down. She's here to apply for a job. Her name's Amanda." Dylan wasn't listening. He ripped off his headphones and ran over to Amanda. "Radio, basically, or is television okay too?" Amanda asked. "If I don't like it, I'll go back to the radio." Dylan grabbed Amanda by the arm, dragged her along some passages, and sat her in a chair in the television studio. He ran off, brought back a sheet of text. "Read it, then we'll look at the picture. You'll memorize it. Which phrases on which video will try to sound out. Don't worry, it's not too hard, and your voice clearly overlaps with the theme." 2 days later, the program was edited. Amanda looked at the monitor and listened to her voice with amazement. Somehow it is not the same, changed, knows that hers, but sounds strange. "What's up, beautiful? Congratulations on your debut. You did a great job on the montage, you made some good adjustments. Why don't you stay at the radio station?" "I don't have a journalism degree," Amanda admitted. "Well, that's surprising. Half of our staff are self-taught with no specialized training, teachers, engineers. I'm a geography teacher myself. Of the scientists here, there are 2 directors, cameramen, a few journalists. Thank God, at least we have licensed drivers. I'll tell you what. I've got a short story. We'll go, shoot it, come back. You write your story, I'll write mine. We'll see what happens. Let's go." There was an unspoken division into castes in the newsroom. The coolest were the court journalists, those who worked with the city and regional administration. Someone traveled to fields and firms, someone told about science and education. There were specialists in crime, sports. Amanda was thrown into culture theaters, concerts, exhibitions, museums. Once she was shooting at a photo exhibition of the city's architectural monuments. Strange, very beautiful photos, unusual angles. The play of light and shadow turned old buildings into sunny palaces or haunted castles. Then the idea arose to make a series of programs about historical places of the city, mini-films with staging and costumes of different times. Julian's husband Henry was strongly opposed to his wife's work on television. "Amanda, in high school you had rationing, schedules, weekends, vacations all summer. What about now? You just started working, you're never home. I don't like it. What do you want, fame? So much stardom on a provincial channel to talk about the premieres of the same provincial theater. Will you even get paid extra for tickets sold? Or are you going to distribute it yourself so they can see that your advertising is useful?" Amanda always went along with her husband Henry. He's older, he's smart, he knows best. But this time she's on the fence about it. "No, I'm not going back to school. I'm going to go mad in a couple years. Why do you need an angry, hysterical wife? Aren't you afraid of getting bit? I'm not home much. It's a good thing I'm sitting here like an owl. You don't come home much at night. I like the editorial office. It's interesting. I'm happy to go to work for once. Do you value your work more than your husband? Henry asked. I haven't dug that deep, but now that we're getting ultimatums, I'll think about it. Henry, we've been together 6 years. We're past our youthful maximalism. It's time to compromise, Amanda said. Julian was finally content no one to keep her awake at night and stand in front of 100 snide teenagers in the morning. Henry was often not home, and if he was, Amanda went to bed early. She made herself comfortable with her laptop, writing plans, programs, and stories, looking for material. At the TV company, the technical service, the broadcasting department, and the administration had a tight schedule, but the journalists were free to behave. What could be taken from them? Creative personalities can stay on set until midnight. They were obliged to show up for editorial meetings. The schedule of orders of cameramen, drivers, and editing studios must not be disrupted. Journalists on duty must be in place, and then compose and write when it is convenient, or when the muse has visited. But if the material is not aired in time, it will not be good. On Friday, Barbara called. Amanda, are you at work? You're the only one who can save me. I'll be right there. Barbara's in trouble. She was stopped at a crosswalk. I got hit from behind by a car. Now my car's in the shop. Can you believe this asshole's making excuses? I didn't know you'd slow down. I mean, it's a crosswalk. He's pushing the hell out of it. He's walking around. Barbara was angry, sparks flying from her eyes. And it looks like a woman's driving, as you know. And who is he? Well, it's all right. I didn't come here for this. Give me the car for tomorrow. At least I have to go to the cottage. Amanda ordered furniture movers. Tomorrow's delivery. You're taking Henry on a business trip. You drive his car? I'll drive you home tonight. Oh, please. Come on, take it. Henry agreed. If you need a car and movers, where are the menu schedules so they don't bump into each other? It's my policy not to mix lovers and movers, Amanda replied. Don't tell me. Maybe you should make some of the movers your lovers. It's a win-win. Henry was going on a business trip to the Business and Investment Forum. It's good to be an up-and-coming investment manager. Production meetings are sometimes held in Turkey. Amanda wanted to go to Turkey too. She had flown with Henry once before, but this time he didn't invite her. Probably the firm is in economy mode, they fly without wives. Although if you save money, you don't have to fly anywhere, you can spend here. But it's none of their business. Why are you flying on Saturday? The conference starts on Monday, Amanda asked. Friends from the Institute are coming from Las Vegas and Chicago. We decided to fly in 2 days early to meet and socialize. We're not going to have time for that. Hey, why don't we call a cab? You know what? We got to get to the airport early? Never mind, I'll take you. Oh, Henry, I didn't tell you. I'm using your car for now. I gave my car to Barbara for the weekend. The morning was as gloomy as ever. Maybe I should have been a hero for nothing, Amanda thought. Let him call a cab, but now it's too late. She volunteered to drive, so they'll go. Henry drove to the airport, and Amanda dozed in the passenger seat. Henry put on some music, looking cheerful and content. And Amanda wondered, where does a man get so much energy in the morning? Although if she were flying to Turkey, she would also radiate joy and optimism. She walked Henry to the departure area, kissed him, waved, got a glass of coffee from the machine, and went to the parking lot. I felt sad, not because her husband was leaving, but because she wasn't worried about it. Before, she would have sobbed for hours. What's it like to be separated like this? Now I'm ashamed to say it's a relief that he'll be gone for at least a week. Yeah, the family life had fallen apart. When did it go wrong? I don't know. Amanda sat in her car, drinking coffee, thinking about her and Henry's life. Suddenly she realized, sharp and clear, that there was no love. Who knows? He was smart, mature, 7 years older, reliable. Mom used to say you can't miss out on a fiancé like that. You have to take him before he's taken from under your nose, and Amanda didn't. She liked him. She seemed to love him. And she didn't know what it was like to love. Admiration? Hormones? Yes, love. It was only now that something snapped. It seemed that Barbara, with her endless affairs, was happier than a good wife. She couldn't wait for love and see the sky in diamonds. Didn't know how the mind was filled with feelings. Amanda suddenly realized she was crying. Why would she be crying? It's silly. She was fine. A husband who's the envy of the world, and she's in love. Even if without sparks and surges, but reliable, proven. That's yours, with fireworks and diamonds flashed and passed. But hers is forever, with no surprises. Amanda wiped her tears and drove home from the parking lot. It's cozy and peaceful there. The highway to the airport is almost empty. The road is gorgeous, the face of the city any way you look at it. The morning of a summer day is sunny and bright. The dreariness is gone, the mood skyrockets. Amanda rushes along the highway, smiling at the jokes of the hosts of the morning broadcast of her native TV and radio company. Amanda is distracted by some quiet sound, as if the phone is ringing, but somewhere far away she looks. Her phone is lying next to her and is silent. What's ringing? Pulling off, the highway stopped. It's gone. Looked around, looked in the back seat, opened the glove compartment. There it was, the phone. That's weird. Henry has two of them, probably a work phone for contacting clients. I was going to put it back where it belonged. I reached for the glove compartment, and the phone rang. My hand jerked in surprise, and the phone fell to the floor. Amanda fumbled under the seat, trying to find the phone, but it kept ringing. Penelope glowed on the screen. Should she answer it? I guess so. I should tell her Henry had flown out. Have them call in a week. I hit reply, but I didn't have time to say anything. Henry, are you on the plane yet? We're in Miami. I know you wanted to go to LA. But this is better. The hotel's fancy and the sea's clean. Aiden, are you going to talk to your dad? There was some noise and a child's voice in the distance. Daddy, come quick. I can't hear you at all. The connection's bad. I'll send you the name of the hotel. Kisses, my love. How did you land? Call me. The phone buzzed, and Amanda sat up. Her face went aghast, like a sack of sackcloth. What was that? Wrong number. No. The girl called Henry by name and is waiting for him in Miami. The call was from a Jane Doe Penelope. That's Henry. Amanda was still pretending not to understand. No, that can't be right. It was crazy. But through the mush in her head grew a fierce and firm conviction. Okay, you got it right. Penelope is Henry's mistress. He also has a child. Not a casual liaison, a long-term, you might say, familial relationship. How could it be? Years of lies and pretense. The thoughts weren't forming too clearly in Amanda's mind yet. It was all too sudden. Somehow she would have to think about it, evaluate it, and think and feel and decide how to go on living. But then, now emotions are running high, we have to live up to this then. Enough sitting. It's time to go. The question was where? Amanda imagined how she would return to an empty apartment, unable to work. That's not what's on her mind. Will wander around the rooms and eat herself around the house, and draw pictures one scarier than the other. No. She can't be alone right now. There's no point in going to the editorial office. It's a day off, it's empty. The duty crew is somewhere on the set, and there are no close friends there to whom I can pour my heart out. That leaves Barbara. That's what a friend is for, so that all the troubles and misfortunes, snot and tears go to her. Barbara, are you at the cottage? Yeah, I'm on my way. Barbara didn't even ask why. If Amanda had suddenly gone to the cottage early in the morning, something must have happened. She sounded like she needed to heal her soul, and she needed a shoulder to cry on. By the time Amanda arrived, Barbara had been pacing at the gate for 20 minutes. She was anxious, and she couldn't sit still. She couldn't remember a time when her sensible, positive friend Julian had spoken in such a hushed voice and desperately sought help. She talks about work with enthusiasm and interest. It's all right there, so it's personal. That's what's weird. Julian has an exemplary husband, framed and on the board of honor. In Barbara's opinion, boring, she wouldn't even notice. Well, Amanda's husband suits her. She begged Barbara, how could they not fight once in 6 years? It's all very civil and intellectual. Maybe that's it? In the Urals, they would have once allowed themselves a couple of unparliamentary phrases at each other. They would have pounded the plates a little bit, and then it would have been easier. No, nothing could have happened between Amanda and Henry. It's too unbelievable. Well, don't fantasize. She'll tell us when she gets here. Amanda's confused face added to the anxiety. Something out of the ordinary happened. She dragged her friend out to the veranda, sat her down on the sofa, patted her like a dying person water. And some crazy, surprised eyes, she seemed to see something, but she didn't understand what it was. What's wrong with her? Aliens came and took Henry away. It's no big deal. They'll see it's of no interest whatsoever. Will they give it back? Barbara, stop bouncing around. Sit down. I don't know how to say this, but Henry has a second family. Barbara plopped down in the chair. Now she had a face like she'd seen an alien. That's out of the realm of possibility. What, is the girlfriend crazy or something? I can't believe this. Amanda, what makes you think that? Did you dream it? I heard his Penelope. Amanda told me everything that had happened since that unfortunate morning. You think I misunderstood? Wake up. Say something censorious. How much did you say? A boy. 4 years old. Do you know what that means? If it was a casual relationship, well, there's nothing in life. Love. A baby. But they didn't get married. It didn't work out. If it's a baby. Family life is tiring. He's a whore. He's a bitch. Dad married you and then started a second family. All the years you shared him with Penelope. God, what an abomination. How sensitive and caring. Not a word, not a deed. As long as not to upset you. I wonder Penelope also not upset lives, and you do not know. Or only protects you. Probably loves more. Barbara, with her intolerance for lies, her inability to pretend, would have leveled Henry. She'd call him right now and tell him what he is. But that's Barbara. She doesn't keep men around long because the hint of insincerity is a mortal sin. Reason for the breakup. What will Amanda, who has lived with one man for so many years, who considers family to be the most important value? Barbara couldn't predict. Julian cried, not sobbing, unable to nose. Silently she sat with a frozen face, tears pouring down her cheeks. Not from anger and despair, from resentment and frustration. It turns out that all the years I had been proud of the family I didn't have, and loved a husband who wasn't mine. Why did he do this to me? For love and loyalty. I understand if he fell in love, floundered, suffered and left. But no, sneaky. In cold blood for years. What are you going to do? Divorce. Well, thank God. I was afraid you'd start talking about family values, about years lived in love, about forgiveness and repentance. And divorce is the right thing to do. It's not scary. It's scary to live and wonder, did he come from that wife now? Or is there a couple more? Oh shit, the Padishah's harem. A horn sounded at the gate. The car doors slammed. The furniture's here. Stop crying. Come on, let's get busy. Then we'll sit down, cry, think. Two smart women will always find the right solution. And we're smart, even though we're pretty. You have nothing to do at home, you'll stay here. That wasn't a question. The movers, aka assemblers, turned out to be with 3 young men, quickly dragged a pile of wooden parts into the house and began to make a closet and shelves out of them. At the gate again there was a sound, cars approaching. There was a knock on the gate. The owners. Do you have pickers working for you? At the gate stood a man in his 30s, black, with black hair and eyes. Just like Richard Gere in his youth, only taller. Barbara, having jumped out of the cottage, at once appreciated such a handsome man. She stopped, put on her most charming smile and swam to the gate. Who are you? Liam, head of delivery. So you have my students here. Come in, Liam. That's how you do it. Department heads rush in to help. Amanda had forgotten to suffer. Barbara was so blatantly flirting with Liam. Apparently Barbara's personal relationships were easy, and here she was with someone so young and handsome. It's embarrassing. She's sitting there suffering, and she didn't ask how her friend was doing. Well, nothing. Now the furniture and drawers will be sorted out. She will definitely inquire. Although looking at the active Liam, it was doubtful that they'd sort it out quickly. We've got some student guys working weekends. I gave them an order yesterday. I allowed them not to come to the office after the work was done. I'm going to my country house anyway. Why bother? My summer house is 3 streets away. That's lucky. His summer house is right next door. Barbara's going to find out if he's married. And if he's not, there's no way he's getting out of Barbara's arms. Anyway, Amanda doesn't know anyone who has. Finally, the furniture is packed up. The deed is signed. The students are gone. Liam, like Carlson, flew away, but promised to return tonight. Amanda, you and I have a zebra-striped life. It's like a zebra-striped zebra. I think this zebra's trying to trample me. I don't think it's strong enough. You think you're going through a black streak, your family life is ruined, darkness ahead. It seems to me you have a white streak, began a new job found, husband, bigamist kicked to the exit. You're on your way. Maybe you're right. I lived my life thinking how lucky I was, what a wonderful husband I got. Some people's love is brighter, but my happiness was stronger. I was walking on the black line, not across it. When it's black, then white, but along with the stubbornness of a donkey, I've been moving along. You know what it takes to be happy, to live with someone who appreciates you. And if your husband turns out to be a scoundrel, divorce without regret, and have a lover. You're almost done with the first one. Now you're down to the second. You're lucky to have a friend who's good at that. A girl of about 10 ran into the gate. Aunt Barbara. Mom said to tell you that the bathhouse will be flooded by evening, and the Smith family soaked the kebab. We're having a gathering tonight, she turned and ran off. Amanda, that's how it works here. Saturdays are country club Saturdays. Mourning for family life is postponed. They don't let anyone languish here for long. Let's see what's in the fridge. Let's do our part in the feast. By evening, the tempting smells of heated baths and kebabs wafted through the village. My mistake, Amanda. Saturday night at the cottage is a special, sacred time. Rest is a sacred thing, even for those who didn't come to rest. They stopped digging, weeding, and building. And with a sense of accomplished duty, they set tables on verandas, in gazebos, or right in the garden, under apple and pear trees. Companies turn out to be motley and unpredictable. Someone came with friends, someone has relatives at the dacha instead of the owners. No matter, all acquaintances are not the first year, and although they meet rarely, sincerely welcome each other. Neighbors with their daughter Johnson's shashlik, Barbara with Amanda, and flew in, as promised. Liam sat up almost until morning. What's the beauty of country life? No one's in a hurry. You can sit at the table for hours with breaks for trips to the bath. You can long, taking your time, spit on the cooling samovar, and then even longer to drink unusually delicious tea. It might be ordinary tea, but at the dacha, under the starry sky, after the bath with smoke tastier than from an electric kettle. Amanda thought as she fell asleep, should she call Henry and answer the phone? If she answered, she'd have to explain herself over the phone. I'd hate that. When he got there, we'd talk. Amanda thought about what she was going to say. It kept coming out as nonsense. She couldn't imagine how she could talk about such things. Somehow she felt ashamed, as if it were her fault that her family was falling apart. She was angry that she couldn't find the words to tell her husband about his own meanness. And he's out there at sea, having fun. No remorse. I wonder if he was going to hide his second family. All his life he would take his child to school, take him on vacation, teach, marry, raise grandchildren. Come on, he's fine with it. But her Penelope is not all satisfied. How can she share the father of her child with another woman? We're getting confused ourselves. It's Henry's wedding, it's the program's shooting schedule, and then it's Barbara. It just doesn't seem right. But Amanda knows she's the one smiling sadly and shaking her head reproachfully. That's right. For the whole day, never found time for a heart-to-heart talk, never asked about her friend's personal life. Even in my sleep, I felt ashamed. I woke Amanda. The sun was beating down on her pillow. Barbara was on the veranda talking on the phone. Amanda got up, stretched, feeling good and at peace with herself, and went out onto the veranda. You awake? Liam and I are going to the river. Do you want to come? No. Are you having an affair? I'm going to step in. Well, you said you'd think about who you are. And who is this country macho? I'm going home for breakfast. I'm going to work tomorrow. You go to work, and I get a week's hard labor. Amanda, please just call me and let me know what's going on. I'm worried. Okay, bye. I'll probably get the car back tomorrow. Not the Echo, the macho one. Take a look. He's a good guy. All week Amanda worried, held on, could not work quietly, almost did not sleep. The decision's been made. It's not spontaneous, it's deliberate. It's a bit of a heartbreak. It is not easy to break the established, quite comfortable life. Would it be possible to build a new one? Henry called several times, but Amanda didn't pick up the phone. She had no idea what to say to him. As luck would have it, it had been a busy week. There was an international forum in town. There was a lot of filming. It was impossible to get into the schedule of the cameraman. Dylan persuaded Julian, your cultural and historical performance is a little bypass. The international fuss will be over. Let's get back to eternal values. I'll give you 2 cameramen. I give you my word. In the meantime, idleness. We could argue who is more valuable to mother history. But they won't give you operators anyway. Not to be idle, Amanda decided to look at some old buildings. Maybe an idea would come to mind? In the old part of the city, on the outskirts, on the steep bank of the river, stood the former Ludwig Manor. In Soviet times, the estate housed a distillery. Then the factory moved to new workshops, and the manor house became useless and slowly crumbled. When Amanda arrived there, she realized why the building wasn't even listed as a monument. There was no monument, no floor or ceiling, collapsed staircases and dilapidated walls. The vodka factory didn't feel sorry for the estate. The equipment was taken out through a break in the walls. The place was beautiful, a high bank, a river, a forest behind the river. Quiet. It didn't seem to be in the city, it smelled of honeyed herbs. Amanda saw a plan for the development of the town. Soon there would be cottages here, no old walls left. It was as if the brilliant Ludwig had never lived here. In the complete silence, Amanda heard some sound. It was unclear what, but she was not alone here. She listened. A dog whimpering walked toward the sound. No, it wasn't a dog. It was crying. The crying seemed to be louder at the far end of the building, where the catacombs just began. Amanda couldn't figure out where it was coming from. Who's in here? Where are you? A choked cry came from somewhere below. Amanda walked cautiously over the rotten boards piled on the ground. At one point, the boards formed a 2-meter-long breach, and underneath was a hole 2 meters deep. Amanda lay down on the boards, crawled over. At the bottom of the hole sat a boy about 7 or 8 years old. Can you stand up? No, I broke my leg. Amanda remembered seeing a makeshift ladder by the entrance, a board with cross bars. She fetched the ladder, lowered it into the hole, and climbed down. The boy was dirty, scared. He looked up at Amanda with pleading eyes, clinging to her neck. Only tight. Come on. Amanda climbed up, clinging to the rungs, splinters digging into her palms. She prayed the old and rotten ladder wouldn't fall apart. Amanda crawled out of the hole, put the boy on the boards, and collapsed beside him. I need to catch my breath, the boy said. My cell phone flew off when I fell. I need to call my dad. Amanda looked around. Yeah, there he was. Let's get to the car and call him there. Can you walk? I couldn't walk very well. My leg was really broken. They made it to the car. In the boy's cell phone, Amanda found his father's cell phone number. Dad, Austin, where are you? An excited voice called out. I'm taking your son to the pediatric trauma center. Don't be alarmed, it's just a broken leg. Here, go there. The trauma center took x-rays. It's nothing serious. It's a non-displaced fracture, the doctor said, and took Austin away to get a cast. Amanda sat in the hallway, unable to leave. What if Daddy got carried away? An excited man was running down the hall. Here comes Daddy, Amanda thought. Did you find Austin? Sit down, they're putting a cast on him. Why don't you give him a minute? I think I'm gonna go. Where did you find him? Ludwig Manor? Where is that? What was he doing there? Ask him. Why do you leave your child alone in the ruins? It could have been worse. Richard was in the office when Austin Harper's nanny called to say the boy was missing. They were walking in the park, and suddenly Austin was missing. Harper circled the park, calling, but he was nowhere to be found. Richard drove around to every place his son could be, but he couldn't find him. When Amanda called, he was filing a police report. Austin was brought out of the treatment room with a cast on his leg. Richard rushed to him, grabbed him in his arms, held him tightly. Austin sobbed. "Daddy, don't scold Harper. It's my fault. I snuck out on purpose. I thought I'd see the old house and come back. It wasn't her fault. I know it's not her fault. Only now she's lying there with blood pressure. The doctors are giving her shots. You got a broken leg as punishment for your shenanigans. Why would she do that?" Richard put Austin in a chair and ran after Amanda, who was leaving. "Young lady, wait, I'm sorry, I didn't even thank you. It's just so crazy. My name is Richard. Here, take my card." "I'd be glad if I could help you someday," Richard said. "Would you mind giving me your cell phone number?" "Don't think anything of the sort. After today's adventure, I'm not thinking straight." "I'm Amanda, and I won't give you my phone number," she said. "Have a good day. Feel better, Austin." Tired, dirty Amanda drove home. Only now she was afraid. If she hadn't gone to the manor, what would have happened to the boy? The place is remote. Hardly anyone else would have come. A good boy would have rushed to his nanny's defense. And his father must be a good man, too. Anyway, his son loves him. The week flew by. Henry's coming back today. We're ready to meet and talk, but our hands are shaking with excitement. Amanda walked around the apartment, moving things from place to place, accidentally knocked over a vase of flowers, dropped a cup of coffee. She couldn't calm down. I wish he hadn't come. Gone forever. Then there would be no one to explain to. The key turned in the door. Amanda flinched, and suddenly a wave of rage swept over her. She'd been saving up for a week, and now she was on top of it. "You bastard, you're here," she exclaimed. Amanda took a deep breath, trying to calm down. No yelling. Henry didn't need to know what was going on inside. A smiling Henry walked in, tired but happy to be home. He was always so happy to be home from business trips. Only now Amanda was looking at him with different eyes. The look was insincere, the smile fake. He walked over and hugged her, showing his joy at coming home. "Amanda, I missed you so much." "I haven't," Amanda replied. "I wondered how long you were going to hang around like a pond. When are you going to make it to shore?" Henry froze. "Well, let's not get carried away. I know about Penelope Aiden. Why didn't you tell me for so many years?" "I didn't know how to tell you." "Well, you could gesture." "You thought I'd never find out? Hiding it from me was a problem? Living with two families? No problem?" "I didn't see it coming." "How? That you'll cheat from the day you get married? That the two families will live in parallel? Or that I'd find out? Of course you didn't think." "You can't think or feel," Amanda continued. "There's no other way to explain your life. I'm not exaggerating. I love you. Why should I love you? Do you love Penelope? Why didn't you go to her and the child? You, Henry, are a lousy husband and a lousy lover. I'm divorcing you. I don't care who you live with or where you live." Henry was pacing around the room. He'd never thought about life that way. Where had he miscalculated? How did Amanda know? He looked at her in bewilderment. "What divorce? I don't need a divorce." "Well, she found out she was hurt. Why get a divorce?" "Why don't you say something? This is about our common husband. We're talking about serious things. Divorce, Henry. 6 years of marriage doesn't count. We had a good life. You were fine with it. If I hadn't found out by accident, we would have moved on. I'm not a stupid woman, so why break it up? I'm not going to go back to that family. Let everything remain as it is. Penelope does not insist." "I don't care about your Penelope. I insist. You don't even know what I'm talking about. Let it remain as it is? I'm not satisfied as it is. I don't know how to live like this. Henry thought the only thing he was guilty of was hiding it badly. He didn't realize he didn't know his wife at all. So much the better. She wouldn't have to worry about the divorce. Only regret the years wasted on a man with no conscience and no feelings. When you come to get your things, I'll file for divorce myself. I think it'll be a quick divorce. There's nothing to split, no kids. Henry wanted to say something, but didn't dare. The look in his wife's eyes was too fierce. He left. Amanda shook again. The tension finally released. It's done. Nothing more to wait for. There was no pity for past love. It was as if vaporized at once from squeamishness. There was no longing or bewilderment left on her heart. The international event was over, and Dylan had fulfilled his promise. Amanda owned 2 cameramen, shot a lot of material, and sat in the editing room all day long, reviewing, selecting. After a day like that, she was exhausted. She decided she wouldn't work on weekends. Not even at home. Maybe we should go to Barbara's. She's been missing. Amanda must have a crush on Liam. She thought about poor Austin a lot. How's his leg? Whether it was proper to call Richard and ask about her son's health or not, she twirled her business card in her hands. Wow, vice president of some publicly traded company. He's cool. And he didn't take care of the kid. It's a common thing. We build our careers and don't care about our families. Still, Amanda decided to call. Richard, it's Amanda. I'm worried about Austin. Amanda, I'm so glad. Austin beat me up. Why didn't I take your phone? He really wants to see you. I'm sorry, I know this seems weird, but could you meet him? He can't get over the horror of the pit. Maybe your presence will calm him down. Please don't say no. I'll pick you up wherever you say. Okay, in an hour. I'll give you the address. Richard's house smelled of freshness, flowers, and pies. Austin, on his crutches, hopped around the house, chattering away. He didn't look like a worried child, but he was genuinely happy for Amanda. Daddy. Amanda was dragging me up the stairs, and I was so scared. I was afraid I'd fall again. She's brave, Austin called Nanny Harper. Amanda was being painted by a young girl. It turned out Harper was a woman in her 50s, short, chubby, cozy. Her pies smelled of the house. Lunch was delicious. But Austin's mom wasn't at the table. Amanda didn't ask none of her business. Amanda, when my cast comes off, Daddy and I are going boating. Are you coming with us? I think the young man has a crush on you. Don't say no, it's beautiful out there. Amanda was embarrassed. She'd never been in a big house with servants, and it had been a long time since she'd been genuinely interested in herself. Austin stayed close to her, talking about school, friends, hobbies. Richard smiled and tried not to interfere. When Richard was driving Amanda home, he suddenly stopped the car and said, "Thank you. I haven't seen Austin like this in a long time. Probably not since his wife left." "Richard, I saw a picture of your wife in Austin's room. Where is it?" "I'm sorry, none of my business," Richard said. "I'll tell you. But I have a condition, 2 conditions. 1, we're going for coffee in that cafe over there. 2, we're going to be on a first-name basis. It's uncomfortable to talk about personal things to someone you're on a first-name basis with." Richard didn't marry out of passion or calculation, but out of love. A pure and sincere girl, affectionate and sweet. She was from a family of little wealth. Richard liked to spoil her with gifts and trips abroad. That's probably what did her in. She decided that everyone owed her just because she was so good. One day when Austin was 3, Richard came home and found a note, "I'm gone. Beg or no, Austin will be raised. I'm not coming back. I have a new life." When Richard drew up the divorce, learned that she lives in Paris, no contact with anyone, ran away, abandoned the child, never once called, and he cried and waited for his mother. Richard worked a lot, tried to be with his son more often, but time was disastrously short. Harper became a mother, grandmother, and savior. So Austin could not ask, could not blame Harper. It never occurred to Richard. She was the guardian angel of his small family. A year ago, it seemed to Richard that there was a girl in his life with whom he could be happy. Richard had no illusions, realizing that Frances was more interested in his status and position than he was in himself. It suited him. He himself did not burn with passion. Frances was beautiful, intelligent, quite consistent with the title of vice president's girlfriend. She treated Austin well. Maybe not very warm-hearted, but understanding. True, Austin couldn't stand Frances. If she sat down at the table, he refused to eat. When she came in, he'd shut himself in his room, give one-word answers and smile. He showed her he was not welcome. Richard thought his son was jealous. He thought it would work out in time. Frances thought so too. She said she'd do anything to make Austin accept her. Frances and Austin were home alone. Richard was at work. Harper had gone to the market. Frances burst into Austin's room. She had a dress and paint in her hands. "Did you accidentally do that?" she asked. "What are you lying about? You say nasty things to me everywhere you can. You little bastard. It's okay, I'll get rid of you. Your father will send you to boarding school. I'll do my best. Your mother abandoned you, and rightly so." The door opened and Richard came in. "Get out," he shouted. "Richard, I'm leaving," Frances replied. Richard wondered how he could have gotten involved with such a lying, cruel woman. She'd fallen for her beauty, her ostentatious intelligence. Richard made no further attempts at a private life. His son's peace of mind was more important. "That's my private life," he sighed. "It's not much, but it's substantial. You know, I don't think Frances Austin would accept any woman in the house after that. And he met you today." Indeed, Richard and Austin slipped into Amanda's life. The meetings were infrequent, but there was a warm, pleasant feeling that they were close to each other. They might be friends for now, but things were moving towards something more. The cast on Austin's leg was removed. The long-awaited boat ride on the lake took place. The lake was indeed beautiful. After the boat and ice cream, Austin rushed to the amusement park. While he experienced all the rides in a row, he was clearly not dizzy. Amanda and Richard wandered through the alleys of the park. "Amanda, it's my father's anniversary in a week," Richard said. "I'm asking you to come with me. I know it's a strange request. I'll try to explain. And then you can decide." Richard's father, Walter, was an important figure, the owner of several engineering plants in the region, and more. Now he was opening a branch in his hometown. He put two young and promising managers at the head of the new plant, Richard's son and son-in-law Simon. Between the young men there was a struggle for Walter's trust. The relatives had radically different views on the development of production. Each tried to prove that his project was more promising. But Simon had one strong advantage: he was long and firmly married to Richard's sister. And for Walter, a strong family was synonymous with stability. Richard had married badly, left a child without a mother, and had never been able to organize his personal life. If a man can't get his life in order, he is unlikely to be able to run a factory. Richard just happened to have Frances, a relationship of sorts, and in an attempt to improve his reputation, he told his father he was getting married. He and Frances had been separated for a long time, and now Walter demanded that Richard finally introduce his chosen one. "I want to see who my grandson will live with," he said. Walter had loved his late wife very much. He never remarried and never took off his wedding ring. Richard could not come to the anniversary alone, not so much for career reasons, although that too, but for fear of upsetting his father. Walter is very excited at the thought of his not-so-happy son having a family. "Amanda, play the part of my girlfriend, please." "Just for 2 days," Richard asked. "My father would stop lecturing me about the benefits of family life, stop worrying about Austin's future, see that I could be trusted, and finally approve my project. It's actually better than Simon's. I know it sounds crazy, but please help me." "No, Richard, it's stupid," Amanda said. "How will you explain where the bride is gone?" "I'll think about it later. Now, if I come alone, my father will be disappointed, thinking I've deceived him and I'm no good for anything. You don't have to do anything. You're just coming to visit for 2 days to relax, have fun." "I can imagine the fun." "No, Richard, it's a really stupid idea. Think about it. There's still time." Amanda thought if she could just go with Richard to visit, even to his father's house, she'd be willing to play the bride, to pretend, to deceive. No, it was impossible. She was so worried, so anxious to help Richard. And so she did. And to confirm her doubts, or perhaps to remove them, she called Barbara. Barbara, as always, had her own opinion. "You should go. What if you guys have a little thing going on over there?" "What's going to get twisted?" Amanda wondered. "What are you implying?" "Oh, come on, I don't see it. We're adults, so why pretend? You can be friends with Austin. You can't be friends with Richard." "Julian's no dumber. It's a great opportunity." "Make sure you go," Barbara said. Yeah, the girlfriend helped. Amanda had even more doubts. On Friday, Richard called. "Amanda, have you decided something?" he asked. Austin's voice could be heard in the phone. "Dad, give me the phone." "Amanda, will you come with us? Daddy's very upset." "Well, be his fiancée, even if it's just a pretend one." And Amanda gave in. "Okay, I'll do it." Walter's country home was impressive, a bright, huge palace. A maid greeted them at the entrance. "Richard, they're waiting for you in the parlor," she said. "I'll take your things to your rooms." Amanda was surprised that the house was empty. "Where are the guests?" she asked. It turned out the reception was tomorrow. Tonight was a quiet family dinner. Just her father, Roberta's sister, and her husband Simon, Richard, Amanda, and the children. "Dad didn't ask the bride much, didn't ask where she worked," Richard said. "But then there was Frances. I said that she writes poetry and plays tennis. Well done. Poems, then okay, if I read some nonsense. They'll just think that the girl thinks she's a poet. But she's got no talent. But with tennis is worse, never held a racket in her hands. So try not to have any tennis tournaments here. You guys have a court, right?" At the head of a large oval table sat a tall, gray-haired man, Walter. On one side of the table sat a woman with a thin, nervous face, Roberta. A man with a poisoned, tense look, Simon. A teenage girl and a boy of about 10. The other half of the table was vacant, apparently for Richard and his family. Amanda was worried it was all a bit too pathetic. It was like a great nobleman and his staff. Walter stood up and walked over to Richard, Amanda, and Austin standing in the doorway. "Hello, Richard," he said. "I'm glad you finally brought your bride. What are your names?" "Amanda," she replied. "Meet Amanda. My daughter Roberta's family. Welcome to the family." So much for family, Amanda thought. Roberta was not welcoming them with open arms. "The girl must be a rich hunter," she said to Simon. "Richard would have an affair in a heartbeat. He's not picky, brother. He'll marry despite her, just to get Simon's project away from her," Roberta said. "But it won't work. We'll fight." The dinner was of the highest order, with a change of dishes and wines. Roberta was always making sure the children behaved properly, constantly reprimanding them. No one brought up Austin. He ate not what he was supposed to eat, but what he wanted. He especially liked the cake. Roberta, the son, ate a piece and reached for the second. "Austin, have you had enough?" she asked. Austin glanced fearfully at his mother and pulled his hand away. But then he gave Amanda a sly look. "Amanda, can I have another piece?" "Sure, let me put it in," she replied. Austin seemed to dislike Roberta and their children. In any case, there was no kinship. Walter watched the family wars with a grin. He had a renewed desire to show Simon's importance, despite his mediocrity. Richard's inability to assert himself was frustrating. It had long been clear that his project was better. The only good news was that Richard would finally get married. "I wanted my son to be happy. I'm relieved for Austin. He seems to like his dad's choice. I guess the kids can go out and play." "We'll talk more," Walter said. "Do you know how hard I worked to build my empire? I'd hate to see it fall apart after me. Simon, you know what I mean. Tell you what, successor. This project is your test of independence. You have a problem with decision-making? Roberta's been driving you crazy. She decides what you do and when you do it. Roberta, would you stop raising him? He's growing up." "Richard, according to the latest report, the rolling mills are stalled. They put the mill's equipment in there. We need to modernize. What are you suggesting? You can't fix your own life." "I'm sorry, Amanda. "I didn't mean you," Walter said to her. "What the hell are they doing?" "It's like a meeting of irreconcilable relatives or a production meeting." "Interesting family," Amanda thought. Walter is tough and straightforward. Richard is soft and non-confrontational. Roberta's the one who's a fan of underhanded intrigue. Something tells me she doesn't like me. Is she going to do something nasty? All right, one more night, one more day. Another surprise. Amanda and Richard were put in the same room. "No putting the bride and groom in separate bedrooms," Roberta said. "How are we going to sleep?" "I didn't think about it," Richard replied. "Somehow I'm not ready for the wedding night." "You're not?" "I've been looking forward to it. That's why you came," Amanda grinned. "Stay off the bed. I can't fit on the chair, I'm curled up here." Amanda changed her clothes, opened the closet door, changed her clothes behind it, and ducked under the blanket. "All right, turn on the light," she said to Richard. Strangely enough, she fell asleep almost immediately. Probably too many impressions. In the morning, when she lifted her head from the pillow, she saw Richard on the floor on the mat. "It's a little small for a chair," Amanda said. "Richard, get up. There's going to be a lot of guests tonight." "I'm afraid I'll say something," he said. "The main thing is that my father believed him." "How will you explain yourself later?" "We had a fight," Amanda shrugged. "And if Walter found out I wasn't my real fiancé, what would happen to you? He'd never be able to trust you again." There was a rustle outside the door. The door opened. Austin came in. "Uncle Richard, Mom said to tell you that breakfast is in 15 minutes. The door slammed shut. "So Roberta and her son came up," Richard whispered. He must have heard the conversation and seen the bed on the floor. "I wonder if they'll give me breakfast or throw me out of the house right now." Amanda and Richard came down the stairs, and Walter stood at the bottom like a messenger of fate. "Everybody in my office. Get Austin." Everyone in the office stood at attention. "And Walter, do you keep track of the household?" Richard asked. "Roberta, what did you want to say?" "Dad, they're lying to you," she blurted out. "Amanda is not a fiancée at all, just a fake girl." Richard made the whole thing up to further his project. "You don't trust Simon? These guys are playing you for a fool. They're not even sleeping together." "How do you know that?" Walter wondered. "I held a candle to it," Roberta said. "Richard is your brother. Why are you snacking on him like that? Are you hoping you'll kick him out and put your sycophant as director? You don't know me well enough to think I can mix personal and business. And who Amanda is, we'll figure it out." "Dad, I won't let you hurt Amanda," Richard said. "Dylan, shut up. Austin, tell me, grandson, who is Amanda?" "No one yet. But Daddy gave her a ring and said they're getting married soon," the boy answered. "Squad," of course, Walter added. "I love her very much. I want her to live with us. That's the end of the conflict. Get ready to greet your guests. Don't forget it's my anniversary." Amanda, in her simple dress, felt awkward around the ladies in their evening gowns. Roberta, who'd been giving Amanda the evil eye all evening, added to her nervousness. At the height of the evening, when Walter was excited from congratulations and drinks, Roberta whispered to him, "Papa, since he's not getting married, how about we surprise him? Take over the wedding." At last, a sensible suggestion. Walter exclaimed. He took a glass of champagne and turned to the guests. "Gentlemen, I have a toast. My son Richard is getting married." The guests clapped and reached out to Richard with congratulations. And Walter continued, "I'm taking charge of the wedding." Richard jerked to say something, but his father wouldn't let him. "I don't mind. It's my decision, lovebirds." "How are you going to get out of this?" Amanda whispered in Richard's ear. "What the hell kind of wedding is that?" "I'll think of something," he replied. "What will you think of, thinker? Let's tell him right now." "It would only make it worse," Amanda objected. "Don't do it in front of everyone. We'll leave now and that's it. It's none of your business anymore. From now on, I made the mess, and I'll clean it up myself." We drove in silence. What was there to talk about? Amanda thought the whole thing had been bullshit from the start. How could she have agreed to it? Thank you, Barbara. Now she'll lose Richard and Austin. She won't be able to communicate with them like she used to, easy and friendly. Richard thought the best solution was to stop pretending and have a wedding. We can do it without a wedding. Why bother Dad? We could just sign the papers and not have to sign as long as Amanda's around. Too bad Amanda couldn't hear his thoughts. Austin wasn't thinking about anything. Sleeping. It had been a delightful day. Now we've got to get back to normal. Filming, texts, test screenings. Nothing was working. I couldn't get Barbara's ambiguous situation out of my head, and she wouldn't call on principal. Would they advise her again? She wanted to call Richard, but it was awkward. There was a reticence between them, an embarrassment. I knew it was over. In the evening, when Amanda was trying to concentrate on the text, but it wouldn't write, the doorbell rang. A tall, pretty blonde stood on the doorstep. "Amanda, we need to talk," she said. "I'm Penelope." Amanda was surprised, but let her in. "Come into the kitchen," she invited. "Amanda, I understand you're upset," Penelope began. "Henry left. You realize he's not coming back. Give him a divorce. We have a son." Amanda stopped understanding. "I filed for a divorce a long time ago," she said. "I could have gotten a divorce in 3 days. But Henry wouldn't budge. I had to go through the courts. But they'd been divorced a long time. So he didn't tell Penelope. He decided to keep her as his backup wife. Well, how to explain to her that he will marry 5 more times, and she will still be waiting for him to divorce? "Penelope, my words may offend you now, but chase this lying man out of your life," Amanda advised. "You and I wasted a lot of years on a worthless man. I didn't know you. Apparently you knew about me. Use your mind. He won't change. Let him go." "What the hell?" Amanda exclaimed. She ran into the room, grabbed her passport, and shoved it under Penelope's nose. "Here, look. A divorce stamp." Penelope stared with mad eyes. "Here, damn it." Still as women to calm down, Amanda got angry. "Penelope, come to your senses. You, I know, love him. I also loved. I could not think that I share him with another. Get him in the neck. He will still marry. And you'll wait and be a second wife forever. To spare. That's harsh, but true. As soon as you kick him out, a worthy man will appear. This is from personal experience." Penelope stood up and quietly wandered to the exit. I wonder if she had heard anything Amanda had said. She turned around at the threshold, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," Amanda said. "I'm sorry. Here's more proof that I did the right thing. Henry won't change. I wouldn't find out by accident. Penelope would live another 10 years, then I'd have to ration the wives. To hell with it. Richard's not calling. That's the problem. Barbara persuaded me. Call him yourself." "No, the fake fiancé part was over, so let him do it himself," Amanda replied. Although she missed both Richard and Austin, she was used to having them in her life. It seemed as if they would be. Barbara teased. "May, are you in love? Don't you dream about him at night?" Amanda was tired of waiting, dreaming and hoping. She thought she had a special relationship with Richard, but it didn't. Well, that's fine. There's work, there's Barbara. I'll live. Richard didn't call. He just showed up. "Amanda, I told my dad everything he began. How you saved Austin, how I talked you into playing the bride. He wasn't mad at you, of course, but at Roberta and me, at Roberta for her evil setups, at me for my stupidity and indecision." Walter immediately recognized Richard in Amanda's game. A man with a keen eye and a shrewd mind others don't run a business. Realized that Richard had not brought a bride but a girl he really liked. He was amused by the way they coddled and tried not to make mistakes. Liked Amanda's attitude towards Austin, and when he stood up for Amanda with his chest, he realized that his son had finally made the right choice. The cherry on the cake was Roberta's attitude toward Frances. If his spiteful and jealous daughter is scheming, it means she senses danger. Richard would marry and she would lose the advantage of a model wife. She announced her son's wedding and watched evil take root. Roberta was sure there would be no wedding. When Richard told the truth, his father told him he would be a fool not to marry Amanda. Richard tried to explain that Amanda had no intention of getting married. "You're the one who has no idea," Walter replied. "To know if a girl wants to get married, you have to at least ask. You seem normal, but you can't see the obvious." "I'm sure if you propose, she won't say no," Walter said to Richard. "Goodbye. What kind of mother are you?" "No, Julian will say yes," Richard replied. After talking to his father, Richard decided not to call, but to go and propose. He was already excited about the idea. He realized he couldn't live without Julian, and Austin was itching to do it. "Why isn't Julian coming over? Did she forget us?" "Julian, will you marry me?" Richard asked. "Dad," without waiting for an answer, is already organizing the wedding. "I'm sure you'll agree to it." "Roberta's the one who's happy," he continued. "Dad, sure, but I'm not so sure. You've never once said you love me. Not once have you asked me if you love me. Amanda, I love you. Will you be my wife?" Amanda smiled gently and said, "Yes." A rich man sheltered a shivering beggar, and when at night he heard the melody of a lullaby. "Daddy, I got first place," said Mealy. Andrew smiled. It was his daughter. For 15 years of her life, she had given her father many reasons to be proud of herself. And now the girl called her parent to inform about another victory. She was in New York on another Olympiad for young programmers. Mealy went there as part of a group from the Center for Gifted Children, where she had been studying for 4 years. "My smart girl, congratulations," said the man. "I owe you a present." "I'm so glad." Mealy's voice trembled with excitement. This contest was very important to her. It had been about 5 years since Mealy had decided on her profession. She would be a programmer and would definitely go to Stanford to study. There are so many opportunities for young professionals there, not like in their provincial town. Mealy was already getting crowded. But to get into such a prestigious university, you need to win national and international competitions. So Mealy was doing her best. "Rest now," encouraged his daughter Andrew. "Walk around New York, since you are in such a beautiful city. But be careful there." "Yes, Daddy, of course. I love you." Mealy pressed the reset button. A short beep sounded in the phone. Andrew smiled again. Mealy is so smart, intelligent, sensible, far more savvy than he is. At her age, her daughter will achieve a lot. Oh my. And some 9 or 10 years ago, Andrew was looking for information about schools for children with mental retardation. Everything was going to give her to the first grade of the correctional institution, in a normal school, and certainly in the gymnasium or lyceum would not take her, because in his 6 years the girl did not speak a word, mooing. Sometimes she explained something with gestures if she needed something urgently, but this rarely happened. Most often the daughter was in her own thoughts, sitting on the windowsill in the nursery. It was her favorite place, looking out the window and thinking about something. Mealy hardly smiled at that time. Andrew did not immediately notice that something was wrong with his daughter. He was too busy with his own grief. And Mealy? Well, what could Mealy understand then? She was only 2 years old. She probably didn't even remember Leanie, her mother. That's what Andrew thought. But the disappearance of her mother from the life of a 2-year-old baby still caused a serious trauma to the little girl. It turned out later. The consequences were catastrophic. Every time Mealy achieved another success, Andrew rejoiced and saddened at the same time. Rejoiced. It is understandable why. Sadness, on the other hand, was due to Linny not seeing it all. She would have been happy to know that her favorite, long-awaited daughter was growing up to be such a smart girl. But that's just the way it turned out. Andrew grew up in a wealthy family and was an only child. Moreover, even at the grandparents, he turned out to be the only grandchild. It is not difficult to assume that from an early age Andrew bathed in love, recognition, and attention of loved ones. He had everything he needed for happiness: beautiful clothes, expensive toys. He was taken to expensive resorts. Delicious pancakes and fragrant pies were prepared for him on demand. Andrew received detailed answers to all his questions and at any time could play with one of his relatives, for example, in board or mobile games. He was never refused. His relatives adored Andrew, and he reciprocated them. It is a blessing to have such a strong, friendly family, where everyone is ready to support the other in any situation. When Andrew became older, He had to study a lot in a prestigious private school. A lot of lessons were assigned, and additionally the boy was engaged in several sections: swimming, boxing, financial literacy, business school. All because he was to become the heir to the family business. So parents called the network of pizzerias, the owners of which were. Business steadily brought good profits and grew, developed. Even branches in other cities opened. Andrew, since childhood, delved into the wisdom of family business. His father often took him with him to the office, showed his very young son financial documents. In general, his father was actively preparing his replacement. "There's not much that can happen to me. You must be ready at any moment to be at the helm," he said. However, immediately added, "But I hope, of course, for a long time to remain a leader. And in any case, I need a worthy assistant. Very soon you will become my right hand." Andrew didn't mind. He liked his father's business, liked to get into the nuances of his business. And the young guy sometimes had quite worthwhile ideas, which his father praised very much and put into practice. Andrew was a great pleasure to see the eyes of his parents light up with pride for his only son. Then Andrew went to study in Moscow, entered the economics department of a prestigious university. Not entirely independently, his father connected some of his connections, but Andrew studied completely independently and was one of the best students of the course. Metropolitan life fascinated the guy. It was bright, rich, diverse, full of adventures and new acquaintances. But Moscow was also tiring as a metropolis. It's good to come here to have fun, to get new impressions. But it's also great to study here, of course. Where else to find such a cluster of talented teachers, theoreticians, and practitioners who have achieved dizzying success? Thought Andrew. But by the last course he realized that his destiny life in his native small town. In Yumatov, quiet, calm, cozy. There is no such a rush there. The road to the office takes a maximum of 20 minutes, and that's if you get into a traffic jam. And in general, there is a special atmosphere in my hometown. It gives me strength and confidence. In general, Andrew himself decided to return to Yumatov. All the more his father needed a right hand. But he knew that if he wanted to stay in Moscow, his parents would not have pressured and did not oppose. They would have supported their son in any case. And it's just wonderful to have such a reliable rear behind him. Andrew came to Yumatov and got to work. Together with his father, they thought over a new project, the opening of a Japanese restaurant. This business was to become a new step in the development of the family business. Prospects were pleasing, plans were inspiring. It seemed that a cloudless future was ahead. In the end, everything with the restaurant of Japanese cuisine turned out, but not immediately, but after almost 5 years. For a while, the project had to be forgotten, as important events began to happen one after another in Andrei's life. And then later, this restaurant practically saved a man's life, distracted him, shifted his attention, and helped him get away from destructive thoughts. But that was later. Anyway, one fine December day, Andrei decided that it was time for him to unwind. He called his former classmate Alexei, and the friends went to the skating rink, just like in the good old days. The skating rink was large, located on the central square of the city. The music was playing loudly, and people of all ages and builds were sliding smoothly on the ice. Snow was falling from the sky in large flakes. In the center of the rink stood a 3-meter-tall Christmas tree. Soon New Year's Eve, Andrei's favorite holiday since childhood. Until now, his parents made him a sweet gift, collected in a beautiful package with Santa Claus' favorite candies of their already 25-year-old son. Andrei was sincerely pleased with this surprise every time. He felt so warm at heart, and memories of his happy childhood came back to his mind at once. Andrei was confident on skates. In childhood, he and Alexei managed to go to the hockey section for 2 years. Then both of them had no time for sports. They started serious studies, but their skills haven't gone anywhere. Here he is, Alexei already at the other end of the rink with girls trying to get acquainted. Andrei grinned. Yes, his buddy will not miss a single beauty. Such a guy won't be missed anywhere. Andrei looked at his friend and therefore probably did not immediately notice her, a girl in a white down jacket and light jeans, so fragile, almost transparent. And he, a big guy, ran at her and of course knocked her down. Ouch. The young people exclaimed at the same time. Andrei suddenly felt his cheeks flooding with paint. He had pushed a man. The guy hastily gave the stranger his hand, helping her up. Sorry, please, it's my fault. "Are you hurt?" he babbled, looking into her marvelous blue eyes. "No, I'm all right." The girl waved her hand. "I was looking around and didn't notice you driving." Andrew could not believe his ears. She apologized. Miracles and only. It would be more logical to hear outraged exclamations from the girl. "I'm sorry, I've only recently gotten on skates. Anyway, I don't know how to skate. That's why I'm bumping into everyone." "But instead," Evie said, "I'm the one who hit you." Andrew looked into the girl's wide-open blue eyes and realized that he did not want to let go of her hand. Although the interlocutor has long stood firmly on her feet, and in his help obviously no longer needed, long brown strands of hair stood out from under her white down jacket. The girl's cheeks were bright pink from the frost. She looked so beautiful, so young, so touching, that the boy couldn't take his eyes off her. "Maybe if you don't mind, I could give you a lesson. Teach you how to skate." "You'd better stay on the ice," Andrew suggested. "That would be great. I never dreamed of having a personal trainer. But that's exactly what I need today," Evie smiled. That's how Andrew met his future wife. Only then, of course, he did not know about it yet. He didn't even think about it, just enjoyed talking to a beautiful girl. Looking like snow maidens in their white jackets, they took a long ride. Matthew had long since left the rink. Andrew and Evie still didn't want to part. They talked about all sorts of things that day, as if they had known each other for 100 years. Andrew was surprised at how much they coincided in everything. Of course, the young people exchanged phone numbers and started dating. Andrew knew about his father's plans for his personal life. The parent wanted his son to marry Mealy, the daughter of a local entrepreneur and business partner. Then the financial gatekeepers would merge their empires into something grand. Mealy was quite a nice girl. The same age as Andrew, serious, career-oriented. She was also preparing to become her father's right-hand woman. Andrew was even initially not against becoming her spouse. Why not? A worthy option. But meeting Evie put an end to all those plans. Evie was from a middle-class or even poor family. It was a fine line. Evie lived with her parents and 2 younger brothers in a 2-room apartment. They didn't starve. They didn't wear rags. Evie had even graduated from the local university. But the family couldn't afford much. For example, they never traveled or dined in restaurants. That is, the financial levels of Evie and Andrew were very different. The girl was a little embarrassed by this, but the guy didn't care. He dreamed of showing Evie the whole world, to make her life bright, happy, and carefree. Andrew truly fell in love and felt that it was mutual. The guy realized that his parents would not be thrilled with this choice. At first, they warned him so many times about girls who dreamed of hooking a boy from a wealthy family, mercantile ladies who planned to move into a beautiful life on the hump of a man in love with them. Andrew knew that such really existed, even met him more than once. But the intentions of such pirate girls were obvious, no matter how much they tried to hide it. And Evie? She was different. Andrew was sure that his mother and father, having gotten to know Evie better, would understand everything and accept his son's choice. And even if not, Andrew was almost indifferent to the opinion of his parents, just to be near his beloved, to see her deep blue eyes, hear her gentle voice and feel how she puts her head on his shoulder. This gesture, for some reason, was particularly endearing to the guy. And so it came to pass. Evie was very afraid to meet Andrew's parents, but it was impossible to postpone. The guy proposed to his beloved, she agreed. No matter how it went, she'd have to meet her new in-laws. The acquaintance went just fine. As Andrew expected, the charming bride won the hearts of his mother and father. It could not be otherwise. Andrew, of course, met with the parents of his future wife and was surprised to note that Evie's father clearly abused alcohol. It was noticeable in his eyes, skin color, trembling hands. The girl's mother looked pale and exhausted. Apparently, she had to carry her entire family on her own. Andrew then sincerely felt sorry for her. Kira did not tell Andrew about his father before, apparently embarrassed. But did she think that his attitude to her because of this will change? How could Kira assume such a thing? In general, having seen in what conditions live his beloved, Andrew even stronger strengthened in the decision to quickly take her away from there, in a new life. Then there was a wedding, lavish, loud, cheerful. Kira, in her wedding dress, resembled a fairy tale princess. Andrew could not take his eyes off her, and he was not the only one. The bride received many compliments from all the guests. True, Kira did not know how to accept them at all. Very embarrassed, although she was pleased. Andrew and Kira began to live in the apartment of her husband. The guy has long since settled in his own home, to his parents came only to visit. Those were wonderful days. Kira was getting used to a new home, to a new life. The newlyweds were learning how to live together. Adult relatives warned that the process of lapping usually does not go as smoothly as we would like. Inevitable conflicts, disputes, quarrels. But in the case of Kira and Andrew, nothing of the kind happened. Young spouses, as if they were created for each other. Andrew every day mentally thanked fate for the fact that she brought him together with Kira. He could not believe that they are so coincidental. They like the same movies and books, the same look at things. Even phrases for each other sometimes finish. Kira worked as a notary's assistant in a local office, and Andrew developed a business with his father. Love, mutual understanding, a house full of cups. It seemed that only cloudless happiness awaited the newlyweds ahead. And so it was for some time, about a year after the wedding. Kira informed her husband that she was expecting a child. The joy of the future father had no limit. They had already been planning a baby for 6 months, but it did not work out in any way. The newlyweds were going to the doctors, waiting for Kira's vacation, tuning in for a long, systematic search for the problem. And here it is, happiness. Everything worked out by itself. Pregnancy was not very easy. Kira was constantly nauseated. She went to the hospital every now and then. Closer to the birth, Kira was diagnosed with heart problems. It seemed as if they had not been there before, or they did not manifest themselves. And then the body, coping with the increased load, suddenly gave failure. Andrew's parents found the best doctors for Kira. She was constantly under observation. Andrew was painful to see his beloved in such a state, and from fear for her, he anxiously clenched his heart. Fortunately, everything went safely. In due time, Kira gave birth to a healthy, strong girl. At the family council, it was decided to name the baby girl Evie. Andrew was happy everything was fine with the child. Kira was also on the mend after childbirth, and the recovery of the young mother's body was in full swing, as evidenced by numerous examinations. Kira quickly recovered and happily plunged into taking care of her daughter. Andrew also did not stay aside, tried to fully enjoy the infancy of his long-awaited child. The man realized that the second baby in their family will not be. Doctors made it clear that Kira contraindicated pregnancy and childbirth. She barely survived this time, too. According to the cardiologist, the young woman was just lucky. Andrew was not ready to risk the most expensive thing he has in his life. And one child is enough for them. He is also in the family alone. Evie turned out to be exactly as it should: healthy, smart, cheerful, agile, and quick. As soon as the daughter began to walk, immediately learned to climb into the most unexpected places, then in the closet with clothes her parents found her, or in the toy box. You need to keep an eye on such a prankster. Evie immediately became a favorite of numerous relatives, parents, grandparents. Adults did not want to soul in the girl, often visited her, gave gifts. Andrew's mother was especially pleased with her granddaughter. Finally, there is for whom to buy dresses. And that all these shorts and sneakers are boring already. Sooner the girl's hair would grow back. I want to braid her pigtails. A year and a half passed. Evie was already starting to talk. Kira devoted all her time to her daughter, singing her songs, telling her poems, practicing finger games and gymnastics with the little girl. And the results were evident. The girl in her year and a half quite clearly spoke in sentences, of course, with a childish accent, but adults understood her perfectly. Andrew's heart clenched with tenderness when his little girl addressed him. The word, this miraculously fragile creature with a height of just over 80 centimeters, made him stronger. The man felt that for the sake of his daughter and wife, he could roll mountains. They were so happy. But at least it seemed so to Andrew. However, Kira once very surprised him, saying that she is happy, of course, but still not quite. It turned out that Kira had dreamed of having another child. Evie has grown up, and looking at the little girl, I regret that the girl will have to grow up alone. You see, I have 2 brothers after all. It's so great. We were never bored. We ran everywhere together, played, talked a lot about everything, stood for each other. But the girl is all alone. That's not good. But I too grew up alone in the family, Andrew objected with a smile. And I had quite a happy childhood. You just don't know what you were deprived of. Kira shook her head and sighed sadly. Andrew felt uneasy. He didn't like this talk. You know it's dangerous for you to give birth again. Remember how hard Evie was on us. You were on the brink so many times. But we didn't know then, and now we do, and we realize it's very dangerous. We've had enough of Evie. That's exactly what we know, Kira exclaimed. And that's why we're going to make a bed. I'll see a cardiologist, I'll take all the right medications. And I'll prepare for pregnancy, I'm already taking the right vitamins. I've read a lot about these cases. If you keep everything under control, the risk is minimal. Kira dreamed of having another child. But Andrew was adamant. They even had their first fight over it. His wife convinced him that everything will be fine. You just need to follow the prescriptions of doctors, constantly observed by specialists, and she is ready for this for the sake of the second baby. However, the man could not risk Kira's life. Of course, he wanted a big family, several children, but not at such a cost. To test fate again, given their recent experience, was foolish. And yet it happened. On a sunny July morning, Kira informed Andrew that they would have a second baby boy. The man was truly terrified then. He probably even turned pale. What's wrong with you? Everything will be fine. You'll see. Kira laughed and put her hand on his shoulder. Andrew only shook his head. He knew, felt that nothing was going to be okay anymore. The pregnancy, oddly enough, was going much easier than the first time. Kira was feeling good, taking lots of walks. She followed all the doctor's recommendations and was examined very often. She literally never left the hospital, although her condition was quite bearable. Everything seemed to be in order, but on the soul of Andrew was uneasy. And for good reason. It happened at night. Suddenly nothing foretold trouble. Andrew woke up from the quiet sounds. Kira was sick, so bad that she couldn't even call for help. Kira was suffocating. Andrew jumped up, turned on the light, and was horrified. He had never seen his wife in such a state. So pale. Black circles under her eyes like a dead man's white skin. Kira's dried lips glistened with sweat. Her chest heaved. The woman was short of breath. Andrew grabbed the phone in a panic and called an ambulance. Then he called his mother to have her and his father come over and sit with Evie. The baby was sleeping sweetly in her princess room and didn't even realize something scary was going on. Andrew held Kira's cold hand, confessed his love to her, asked her to hold on, and prayed. For the first time in his life, he probably prayed to himself that the doctors would make it in time. It seemed to him that when help arrived, it would be too late. And from this thought, Andrew began to panic. But the doctors were in time. Several uniformed men arrived. They went into the bedroom. Kira took a cardiogram, measured her blood pressure. She was listened to, then injected with something. The woman seemed to feel better. At least she was breathing more freely. Andrew exhaled. Everything would be all right now. His parents came over to babysit Evie, so Andrew calmly followed the ambulance to keep an eye on Kira. The man drove through the night city behind the car, in which at the same time medics were fighting for the life of his wife. They should be able to handle it. They're professionals. It's going to be okay. That's what Andrew convinced himself as he drove along. But reaching the hospital, the man learned the terrible news. Kira was not brought. She was gone right in the ambulance. The doctors did everything they could. Pregnancy, which Andrew was so afraid of, still finished his wife. The child could not be saved either. For a while, the man went into himself. He was not interested in anything, neither business, nor his own health, not even a small daughter. He blamed himself for not changing Kira's mind, not forcing her to have an abortion. Of course, he was to blame for everything that had happened. He should have been a more attentive and sensitive husband. He failed, did not save his happiness. Life without Kira made no sense. They had so many plans, so many joint desires. And now what? Andrew felt sorry for himself. Who else will understand him so much as a spouse? Who will love him so much? But even more, the man was sorry for so suddenly, early cut short the young life of his wife. She had not seen all those corners of the planet, which Andrew promised to show her. Didn't have time to enjoy life properly. Mother and father tried to pull their son out of the abyss of despair. They brought to him psychotherapists and psychologists who conducted soul-saving conversations with the man. Sometimes it did make things easier, but only for a while. Andrew did not understand why he should live on. The worst thing was that he didn't even want to see Evie. The girl misses you, his mother tried to get through to her son. Not only did her mom die, but her father disappeared from her life. Just imagine what it's like for the child. Andrew didn't want to imagine anything. He didn't care. And anyway, what can a little girl who is not even 2 years old understand? Probably has already forgotten in Kira and me. But her mother insisted that Evie was not well. She doesn't talk to anyone else or smile. Remember how giggly our little girl used to be? Now she sits around all day rearranging cubes. It's a terrible sight. No one can get her to move. What if you can do it? Only 6 months after the tragedy, Andrea began to slowly come back to life. Parents, friends, and doctors helped. And of course Evie too. The man started working again. And then just then his father offered him to develop a long-planned project, a restaurant of Japanese cuisine. Andrew gladly seized the opportunity to distract himself for a while. The project is huge, a lot of work. We'll have to work hard to enter the market. That's good. Let his head be filled with familiar things rather than destructive thoughts. That's when the man came to see his daughter for the first time in a long time. Andrew felt guilty in front of the little girl. It was as if he betrayed her, abandoned her, left her to her parents. After all, the mother is right, Evie has experienced a huge tragedy. And even if she does not realize everything as an adult, but at the level of feelings certainly felt it to the full. Kira and Evie were so close. She followed her mother like a tail, even climbing into her crib. At night, she'd lie at her mother's side. They were never apart for more than a couple hours. And then all of a sudden, Andrew hardly recognized his daughter. Of course, he realized that children grow up fast at that age. When the tragedy happened, Evie was barely 2 years old. How hard it is for Andrew to survive such a tragedy, to lose his beloved wife Kira, and to see the state of his little daughter Evie after this grief. And after 6 months, he finally decided to visit his daughter. And she was already 2.5 years old. The look of her blue eyes, so similar to Kira's eyes, was sad and somehow adult, not childishly serious. Evie had really grown quiet and sad. She didn't run, she didn't laugh, she didn't even smile. She used to be such a talkative little girl, a real giggler. Relatives and friends were surprised at how developed she was for her age. And now the girl said nothing at all, only sometimes mooed something under her nose. This discovery alarmed Andre. The mother explained that it was the consequences of stress, that all the doctors examined Evie. Physically, she is healthy. But the doctors don't really believe that she used to talk so well for her years. They say it'll work out, she'll talk again. Many children her age are still silent. Andre was grateful to his parents for taking care of his child. He himself was in no condition to take care of the baby after losing Kira. Eva is very cute. For us it is even enjoy, they said. Andrew went with his head into work on a new restaurant of Japanese cuisine, Yamato. He put all his efforts into the project, trying to achieve the highest quality. The restaurant opened even ahead of schedule, but Andre wanted more. He dreamed of having guests from all over the city, and even the region. With Evie he now saw, but not often. The girl still lived with her grandparents. Andrew plunged into work with his head, trying to distract himself from the heartache. Andrew's mother did a lot with her granddaughter Evie and took her to specialists. She developed the little girl at home as best she could. But there was no result. Evie grew up, but she never spoke. It was painful for Andrew to see his once cheerful little girl in such a state. It seemed she still hadn't recovered from what had happened with Kira. Andrew, of course, was still worried too. He longed for Kira, blamed himself periodically, and despaired over his inability to hug his loved one. But he was older and stronger. Besides, he had a job in Evie. She could not cope with her misfortune, and the specialists, on which her adult relatives were not stingy, were powerless. Andrew, on the advice of doctors, bought a cozy country house with a large yard. On the territory arranged for Evie a whole fairy tale park with fountains, swings, and even her own little castle, and in the backyard for the baby built a pool. Many doctors said that swimming has a beneficial effect on the nervous system of children. So Andrew took it upon himself to teach his daughter to swim. Evie quickly figured out what to do. Now she did not get out of the pool in the summer days and again from side to side like a fish. But that didn't work either. True, she became more athletic and sturdy, which of course is not bad either. But she was still silent and not particularly eager to interact with the world around her. Andrew was now taking care of his daughter on his own. That was his decision. After all, a daughter was his fatherly responsibility and duty. During the day with Evie sat Nanny, because the little girl could not be given to a regular kindergarten, and in the correctional did not want there are children with serious diagnoses and mental retardation. Evie is not like that. She is very smart. She has lively, intelligent eyes. She just doesn't speak yet. But daycare is voluntary. You can take your child if you want, or you can keep her at home. And Evie's 6 years old. School's just around the corner. If it goes on like this, we'll have to send the little girl to a special school for children with special developmental needs. Andrew dreaded the thought of sending Evie to a special school. He knew his daughter was capable of many things. She sees everything, notices and understands everything, but she is silent. She can't go to a remedial school. It would only make things worse. But the doctors made it clear that there was no other way out. If a year of rehabilitation does not yield results, Evie will be enrolled in a special school, because she must be educated anyway. Evie, will you say a word? Andrew begged his daughter. You can, can't you? I know. The girl looked at her father with indifferent eyes and remained silent, and then went to his room, sat on his favorite wide windowsill, hugged his knees with his hands and thought about something known only to her. She could sit like that for hours. That November evening, Andrew stayed late at the office. He warned Evie's nanny and promised to reward her generously for her overtime hours. She didn't mind. I've had a lot of children, the nanny shook her head. But this is the first time I've met such a quiet and unproblematic. It's a pleasure to sit with the girl. You can't see her, you can't hear her. Andrew, of course, was not pleased with such compliments to his daughter. It would be better if Evie, like other children, asked a million questions a minute and methodically trashed the whole house. But no. Sitting on the windowsill, staring off into the distance. If you call her to dinner, she comes, eats, cleans up the dishes. If you don't call her, she won't remember that it's time to eat. And so it is in everything. No initiative, no desires. Except for the pool in the summer months gave the girl some pleasure. And even there, in the warm water, she did not smile. So Andrew left the office late. It was almost 8 o'clock. On the way, the man remembered that Evie's favorite cereal had run out at home. It would be a pity if she didn't get the usual product for breakfast. No, the little girl wouldn't make a scandal, wouldn't get cranky, and certainly wouldn't get hysterical. Evie probably wouldn't give away her disappointment. In that sense, Evie was indeed a trouble-free child. But Andrew wanted to please his daughter, at least in small things. He carefully noticed what Evie liked and tried to bring her positive emotions more often. Andrew parked near a convenience store and got out of the warm interior of the car. It was slushy, dark, and uncomfortable outside on a cold November evening. His face was immediately blasted by the icy wind. The man lifted the collar of his jacket to protect his neck and cheeks from the merciless gusts and walked briskly toward the supermarket doors. The doors obediently slid to the sides, letting the visitor inside. Andrew found himself on the stairs leading upward. It was much warmer here than outside, but the dim bulb under the ceiling gave little light. The entire floor was covered in dirt that the cleaning lady hadn't had time to clean up yet. Not a very cozy or pleasant place. The man was about to go up to the store when he noticed a girl in a thin coat that was soaked through. She was sitting behind a column on a high curb that stretched along the wall. Andrew stopped. There was something about the girl's appearance that the man immediately realized she was in trouble and needed help. Long blonde hair, disheveled by the wind, thin hands shivering in the deep pockets of her coat, and her eyes huge eyes of a marvelous turquoise hue. Andrew, it seems, had never seen such confused and sad eyes. It was necessary to approach this stranger, to find out what happened, but Andrew did not want to frighten her. After all, he is a man, and she is a fragile young girl, probably anxious and thinking about him unknowingly. So he walked on by. The supermarket was already sparsely populated. Andrew walked slowly through the rows, throwing Evie's favorite cereal, sausage, cheese, some fruit for himself into his basket. Then he saw a beautiful doll that looked a lot like Evie. Andrew smiled and put the pink box with the rest of his purchases. Maybe this toy would make his silent princess happy just a little. All the while he wondered if that girl would still be there when he left the store. The man hoped that the girl would leave, because otherwise he would have to offer her help. Otherwise his conscience would torment him later. Who knows what her story is? I would not want to get involved in anything. But Andrew's hopes were not realized. The girl sat in the same place, wrapping her arms around her shoulders, trying to stop shivering. Apparently she was frozen to the bone in her thin, soaked coat after the recent downpour with hail. Andrew approached her resolutely and, trying to soften her tone as much as possible, asked, "Are you all right?" The girl raised her amazing eyes at him, in which clearly read surprise. But she smiled a very beautiful, sincere, and kind smile. "Yes, of course it's all right." "I think you're not telling the truth," Andrew also smiled and replied. "You see, when people are fine, they don't sit alone in the supermarket, shivering from the cold. Maybe you should call a cab. You obviously need to get home, get warm." "No, I don't have a home. I don't have a home," she admitted with her head down. "How?" Andrew was surprised. She didn't look homeless in any way. She looked well-groomed and not badly dressed. "It's a long story. But everything will be fine with me. I'll think of something now," she assured. After such an admission, Andrew couldn't just walk away. He sat down next to her on the curb and looked into her eyes. "Tell me, I have a lot of time, so I would love to hear your very long story." Andrew felt sorry for this young girl. What if someday his Evie would find herself in a difficult situation? She will need help, and people will pass by indifferently. After all, this girl is someone's daughter, too. Here's what a stranger who identified herself as Stacy told me. "I grew up in a village in a large family. When I was 10 years old, my father died on a construction site, and our family fell on hard times. The head of the family used to provide for us. By village standards, we lived very well, a full cup, our own household. My mother didn't work. She took care of the house and the children. There were 5 of us. I was the eldest. A vegetable garden, chickens, 2 cows, a goat, there was enough to do. And then Mom was left alone with us. At first, it seemed that the family would manage to stay afloat. But soon it became clear nothing would work. There was a catastrophic lack of money. We had to sell livestock, but the proceeds were not enough for long. Mom tried to work, but for some reason she didn't stay anywhere for long. And in the village there was not enough suitable vacancies. And so my mother started to take to the bottle. Apparently, when she got drunk, she forgot about the loss of her loved one, moneylessness, lack of work, and need. We children were left to our own devices. The house was always dirty and uncomfortable now. I, as the eldest, tried to keep order and bring up my younger brothers and sisters. But I was just a child myself. Looking at what was happening, I firmly decided that I didn't want to live like that. I will definitely have a different fate. While my brothers and sisters rejoiced in the freedom that no one controls, does not force to clean or do homework, I studied. I realized that in order to make it in the world, you have to get an education, and for that you have to sweat. I was praised at school, set as an example to my classmates, and there was a reason for that. Everyone knew the conditions in which I lived. And yet I managed to always look clean, tidy, and study only for A's. Toward the end of 9th grade, Stacy decided on her future profession. She decided to become a teacher. The girl was good at getting along with children, especially with little ones. She taught all her younger brothers and sisters to read and write, although they resisted at first. But Stacy managed to find an approach to each one. She also enjoyed watching the children of her neighbors, and not just to make sure that they did not climb anywhere, and taught them useful things: toddlers, colors and shapes, and older letters and numbers. The parents of the children were delighted with the results and paid the clever girl with food and sweets. Everyone said that she would make a wonderful teacher. In fact, the adults encouraged Stacy to think about her future profession. Time flew by, and now Stacy received her high school diploma with only A's. Her teachers helped her apply to teacher training college and helped her get a dormitory. There was no hope for Stacy's mother in this regard. She had lost her way, turning into a likeness of herself. It was obvious to everyone that there was nothing to be done. The younger children had been placed in an orphanage. It was simply too dangerous for them to stay with such a mother. Stacy had at least looked after them, but the girl had to study. She felt sorry for the younger ones, but she realized that they would be better off in the orphanage, where they would at least be fed and sent to school. And what awaited the children at home? Hunger, cold, and dirt. Stacy's life began anew. She took to her studies with gusto, used to studying, learning new things, becoming smarter and more experienced. Soon she became the best student of her course and was held up as an example to her classmates. In the course of her studies, Stacy realized that she liked working with difficult children. It's easy to work with ordinary children, but kids with special needs are more interesting, and the results are very satisfying. That's why Stacy specifically asked for an internship at a remedial school. There she immediately found out that she can find an approach even to the most difficult children. She was in contact with children with very serious diagnoses, to which even experienced specialists could not reach. "You have a gift, no other way," wondered the head of the school. Stacy smiled embarrassedly. She had been modest and shy since she was a child. After graduating from college, Stacy was immediately hired at the very school where she was interning. The salary was small, but it was enough money for food and a tiny apartment on the outskirts of the city. Her own place, albeit modest. By then, Stacy's sisters had graduated from the orphanage. One became a seamstress, the other a pastry chef. Both soon married well, and their husbands were from out of town. Of course, they took their wives with them. Stacy was happy for her sisters, and a little surprised that they were younger than she was. Very young, almost children, but already married ladies. Now she could not worry about them, their destinies would work out well. True, they will not see each other often, they are separated by thousands of kilometers. But this is not the main thing, the sisters have husbands, education, work. Stacy's two younger brothers were adopted by a couple of Hiddings, bright red-haired twins with blue eyes. The boys came to the orphanage as toddlers, just 8 years old. Handsome, bright, smiling, they were quickly taken in by a family from the city. Stacy didn't know where her brothers were now. Adoption was a secret. But in the orphanage she was told that the new parents very good, wealthy people. So the brothers' fate was safe too. Stacy's mother had a tragic story during her college years. During another drinking party, which her mother regularly organized in her empty house, one of the guests fell asleep with a lit cigarette. The wooden building burst into flames like a torch. Some of the guests managed to escape the burning building, but the mother and several others did not escape. Perhaps they were sound asleep and did not notice anything. It is scary to think what would have happened to the siblings if they had not been in the orphanage. So by her 20s, Stacy was pretty much alone in the world. Her mother was gone. Brothers and sisters moved to different corners of the vast country. Not even her own home was left. But Stacy was not discouraged. She had a desirable profession, a favorite job. It was hard, of course, alone, but she could cope. She had her whole life ahead of her. She'd meet her love, and she'd have children. And their apartment will be big and cozy. Stacy would never repeat her mother's fate. And that's how the young girl lived in a rented apartment. She worked, went to movies and attractions with her friends, educated herself, read a lot of additional literature on the education of special children. And then, perhaps, age took its toll. One day Stacy realized that she couldn't and didn't want to be alone anymore. She needed someone near and dear to her who would take care of her, and she would take care of him too. How great it is to fall asleep and wake up next to a loved one, to talk with him on a variety of topics, to support each other, to make plans for the future. Would Max have made such an impression on Stacy if he had met her at another time? Perhaps the girl fell in love with him so sincerely and wholeheartedly only because she was already ready to fall in love, waiting for it. And then the right person came along. Stacy thought about it later, but she'd never thought about it when she'd met Max. She was on her way back from a friend's birthday party. It was evening. Stacy was in a good mood. They'd had a good time, laughed a lot. The girls went to the club to continue the party. Stacy refused. She didn't like those places. Noisy, crowded, cramped. And she didn't have much money left. She'd just have to make it to her next paycheck. Stacy had 2 important appliances out of order this month, a hairdryer and an electric kettle. Unforeseen expenses. Stacy looked lovely that night, knew it. A flowing, beautiful, slim-fitting sundress, loose hair, light makeup. The proof of the girl's attractiveness was the stares she felt on her. It was pleasant, though a little embarrassing. "Girl, you are so beautiful. Can I meet you?" A voice came from the side. Stacy turned around and met Matthew's eyes. She didn't know it was Matthew at the time, of course. She saw a wonderful guy in front of her. Kind, open face, open eyes of a beautiful hazel hue. There was a lot in them, a light, an interest, and admiration. You could drown in those eyes. "So you don't mind if I walk beside you for a while?" The boy looked at Stacy questioningly. No, the girl smiled. She really wanted this stranger to walk her home. But at the same time, Stacy was embarrassed by her own desire. "Fine," the escort dispelled. They walked through the park. Matthew told his new acquaintance jokes, shared some news, asked her questions about her life. He talked about himself, too. Matthew was an easy and pleasant person to talk to, charming, relaxed. He had a good tongue. The young man didn't go out of his way for a word. Stacy was immediately impressed by the sincerity with which he talked about his own life. And she was sincere with him, too. Matthew's honesty implied a reciprocal honesty. It turned out that Matthew and Stacy had a lot in common. Matthew, too, had grown up in the village, and he, too, was the eldest in a large family. Except that he didn't know his father and didn't remember him. He'd asked his mother, of course, but she didn't seem to remember who had given her her firstborn. Stacy's mother had started drinking after her husband died. Matthew's mother had been drinking for as long as he could remember. But Matthew, despite the lack of control and upbringing, still finished 9 grades, because he understood perfectly well without it he would not achieve anything in life, and dreams and ambitions were always present. So having finished 9 grades, the boy went to the city. The average score of the certificate was not too high, but still the boy was taken to the construction technical college. There was a shortage in one of the faculties. It was just luck. Matthew lived with his grandmother during his studies. She'd never been involved in her grandson's life before. She'd cut her failed daughter out of her life. As if at first tried to pull her out of the swamp, but realizing that it was useless, eliminated. But the eldest grandson did not drive away. She welcomed him warmly. She gave him a separate room and even provided him with money at first, until Matthew found a part-time job. The boy started working early. Life made him do it. While still living with his mother in the village, he mowed grass for someone, helped to paste wallpaper, and painted fences for neighbors. The pay was low, but there was enough for bread and milk. Sometimes there was also enough for sweets. If the boy had not taken care of himself, it is not known whether he would have survived or not. Because there was no hope for his mother, she was not interested in anything but the bottle. In the city, there were much more opportunities for part-time work, especially for a hard-working and not afraid of difficulties student of construction college. So many construction sites, and everywhere you need helpers, ready to do low-skilled work. And the pay was pretty good by Matthew's standards. When I was in college, my younger sisters were taken away to an orphanage. Matthew shook his head sadly. Some of the neighbors complained to the guardianship office. And they did the right thing. The girls would have been lost with their mother. I wanted to file a report myself, but I couldn't make up my mind. I thought maybe it was wrong. Matthew continued. I visited the sisters at the orphanage, bringing them candy and coloring books, asking about their lives. The girls told me that everything was fine, but they still missed their mother, despite her attitude towards them. And then one day I came and found out that the girls had been taken away to a family. I never saw them again. Maybe we'll meet again someday. Life is long. Stacy couldn't believe her ears. Matthew's story was exactly like her own. By the way, the guy listening to her story was also surprised and looked at her like she was his own. Even hugged her a few times. And the gesture was so warm, so natural, that Stacy didn't even feel embarrassed. And then my grandmother died, and I ended up on the street, because a lot of relatives got smart and took the apartment for themselves. Neither my mother nor I got anything. It happens. Matthew sighed. Not only did I lose someone I was very attached to, but I had to deal with a lot of domestic problems. I had to make amends. Matthew withstood the next challenge with fortitude and dignity. He got a full-time job because the money from his part-time job would not be enough for rent and groceries. He only had a year of college left. It was a difficult period, hard work on a construction site plus studying at night. I had to scramble to keep up with lectures and keep my job. I was running back and forth like a stung man. I lost weight, I got gaunt. Almost didn't sleep for months before I got my diploma. But I got through it, Matthew said proudly. But now it's just work, he smiled. It's much easier than combining work and study. I can remember that time. Matthew worked, rented an apartment, just living. Everything seemed to be going well for him, given his background. Time flew by as we talked, and now they were at Stacy's house. The girl was getting annoyed. Wow, how fast they'd gotten there. I don't think this is a coincidence, Matthew said seriously. I've only known you for a short time, but I already feel that you're not a stranger to me. Stacy smiled. She felt exactly the same way. Matthew was so understanding, so strong and kind and good. She didn't want to part with him at all. I'll pick you up tomorrow, okay? We'll go for a walk somewhere. I'll show you my favorite places in the city. I'm sure you don't know any of them, Matthew said. So you don't mind? Of course, Stacy didn't mind. The young people exchanged phone numbers and hugged goodbye. Matthew didn't dare to kiss the girl. It happened a little later, during the very first date they had agreed on. An evening of getting to know each other. Stacy couldn't get enough of Matthew. She finally had a boyfriend. And what a guy. His innate talent for making people laugh made him an instant favorite in any company. Matthew knew and could do so many things. And of course he had a lot of friends. They would call him every now and then and ask him to go out. Matthew would tell them that he couldn't because he was out with his girlfriend. Stacy immediately felt very important and significant for the guy, and this feeling filled her heart with warmth. The young people moved in together quickly. Both felt it would be better for both of them. They didn't want to part after their outings anyway. Renting one apartment was much cheaper than renting two. Matthew moved in with Stacy because his apartment was in a remote neighborhood and Stacy's was more convenient to get to work. In the home, Matthew proved to be a homemaker. He could cook dinner, fix a faucet, and wallpaper. No detail escaped his attentive eye. The guy immediately saw the shortcomings and tried to eliminate them. True, during the joint residence some peculiarities became clear. Matthew could not live without his friends. They often called and met somewhere. After these meetings, Matthew always came back drunk, but not too drunk. It scared Stacy. She remembered what had happened to her mother because of her love of alcohol. Matthew's parents were no better. What if he turned out the same way? But the boy only laughed when Stacy shared her worries with him. Don't worry, I won't make the same mistakes as my mother. I've got my mother's example right in front of me. It won't happen to me, he said. Stacy repeatedly asked Matthew to take her with him to his friends, or invite these people to theirs. The girl wanted to meet the people who were important to her lover. But for some reason, Matthew didn't want those meetings. You see, there are only guys out there. We have our own things to do, our own jokes and conversations. And here you're a delicate, fragile girl. You can't even say a strong word in front of you. And what if someone takes a fancy to you? They'll take you away. I wouldn't want that, he explained. Stacy smiled. She was pleased with Matthew's explanation. Still, he spent too much time with his friends and came home drunk too often. The cloudy eyes, the wobbly gait, the odd wandering smile on his lips. It was a condition that frightened Stacy. And so it went for several years. Stacy and Matthew lived together. The young people became almost a family. At first, the girl dreamed that they were about to get married and, like everyone else, start planning children. The prospects were breathtaking. But these hopes were not destined to come true. Matthew was changing. Maybe he'd always been like this. Stacy just looked at the man she'd chosen through rose-colored glasses and didn't notice his flaws. In fact, at first, Matthew was trying to charm Stacy, showing his best qualities. He knew what it took to attract a girl like Annie. Matthew was disappearing more and more with his friends. Stacy waited for him at night, worried about what might happen to him on the street at this hour. Matthew had come home beaten up a few times before. He often came home drunk. Sometimes, far past midnight, the guy would fall on the couch and start singing loudly, even though he had to go to work in a couple of hours. Naturally, Matthew was unable to work after a night of drinking, and problems with work began. No employer wants an unreliable employee who can easily oversleep and not show up on time. Once or twice you could tolerate it, but when it happened again and again, Matthew was fired. The periods when the guy was out of work and out of money became longer and longer. During this time, Matthew was supported by Stacy. She paid his rent, bought groceries, and even gave him pocket money. He asked for it, and Stacy couldn't refuse. She genuinely felt sorry for Matthew. He was so sincerely remorseful each time, and he promised so convincingly that it was the last time it would happen that he would get clean, explaining his attachment to the bottle as a result of his difficult childhood. How could one not feel sorry for such a person? More on that later. Matthew changed not only outwardly, but also inwardly. He became aggressive. Now he could just yell at Stacy, call her names. Most of the time it was about money. Matthew demanded a lot of money, and Stacy's salary was small. The money was barely enough for the bare necessities. Matthew would just blow through her paycheck. Stacy couldn't even afford to go to a cafe with her friends once a month. Matthew hung out in bars almost every day. He and his buddies took turns throwing banquets. When it was Matthew's turn, he'd ask Stacy for money. He hadn't worked himself in years. Why should he? He was doing well enough. Stacy, of course, had long hoped for a miracle. She believed that with her love and attention, she could pull Matthew out of the swamp that was dragging him deeper and deeper. Stacy offered to take Matthew to the movies, dragged him out for walks in the evenings, tried to find him a job herself. It was all to no avail. A couple of times Stacy wanted to leave Matthew, even packing her things. But when Matthew saw this, he tearfully begged her to stay. "I'll manage, won't I? I love you so much. I'll be lost without you. You'll see, I won't be able to live." Stacy sighed and stayed. She really thought Matthew would be lost without her. She was very angry with her husband's friends. They were the ones Stacy blamed for what was happening to Matthew. "Matthew is such a good guy. He's exactly the kind of guy I fell in love with. But unfortunately, Matthew has fallen in with the wrong crowd. His friends are dragging him down." As time went on, Stacy didn't see any change for the better. The girl suffered a lot. It is necessary to meet her love and again to lose a loved one because of addiction to drinking. Well, it was not her destiny. Living with Matthew was getting harder and harder. He didn't work at all. He didn't even work part-time like he used to. He was taking money from Stacy. She had to go grocery shopping on her way home on payday. She also transferred the rent to the landlord at once because her card was in Matthew's hands and he was looking forward to that day. And then that was it, no more money. Stacy tried to argue. Of course she wouldn't give Matthew the card, explaining to him that it was wrong. But then he'd lose his temper, start screaming, smashing everything around him, calling Stacy all kinds of names. His eyes would glow with rage. Stacy was afraid of Matthew at those moments, even though he'd never laid a finger on her. "Why do you need him like that?" wondered her friends, who were aware of what was going on. "Throw him out of the house and let him live as he likes." If only it were that simple. For one thing, Stacy still felt sorry for Matthew and loved him. Stacy cared about Matthew. Moreover, she even felt responsible for him. Secondly, the girl was elementary afraid. She realized that Matthew wasn't going anywhere, and if Stacy ran away from him, Matthew would chase her. He was becoming more and more aggressive. It was simply dangerous to make a man like that angry. Stacy could see that Matthew's behavior and her own life were only getting worse. But she saw no way out of the situation, and so she accepted everything as it was. She even tried to justify Matthew's behavior. He didn't hit her. He truly loved her. He had swore at her when she was about to leave him. And then that terrible November evening came. Stacy came home early. It was a shortened day at the remedial school. The head of the department was celebrating her anniversary. Stacy returned in high spirits. She had received a bonus as one of the best workers. Pennies, of course, like her salary, but still nice. Stacy's paycheck was small, but she liked the work itself. She knew how to deal with special children. Stacy was happy to see her little students succeed. Each one she looked for an approach, and it was even interesting. But unfortunately, working in a government agency didn't pay very generously. Stacy was offered to move to a private developmental center with good money, but she could not leave the students who were so drawn to her. There were some of them who had no contact with anyone else at all. So for now, Stacy hesitated. So the girl came home early. Matthew was sitting in the kitchen, far from sober. Stacy was very tired. It had been a long week, and there were mountains of dirty dishes, ashes scattered on the table, crumbs on the floor, and things strewn about the room in disarray. Matthew's things. Stacy felt herself starting to boil. "Matthew, what kind of pigsty have you created here?" "What pigsty?" The boy looked around the kitchen with a hazy look. "Clean it up. Now." "You want it? You clean it up," Matthew retorted, reaching for another cigarette. "She's going to boss me around. I've been at work all day. I'm tired. And you're sitting at home? I don't even ask you to cook, though I could." "At least you can clean up after yourself," Stacy said. She realized she'd been wrong to contact Matthew too late. Stacy hadn't expected him to react that way. Yes, he could snap at her, call her hurtful words in response to a remark. But this time it was different. The guy suddenly grabbed his knife and moved toward Stacy. His eyes burned with a vicious fire. "You bitch, I'm so sick of you. You're always buzzing around my ear like an annoying fly." "Matthew, what are you doing? Put the knife down." Stacy reached for the door in fear. Matthew obeyed and threw the knife. It fell to the tiled kitchen floor with a cold sound. The guy walked over and punched the girl in the face so hard she couldn't keep her footing. Stacy hadn't realized Matthew was so strong. Her cheek immediately flared as if it had been burned by fire. Tears sprang from her eyes. Fear gripped Stacy's heart with an icy grip. She knew Matthew was capable of anything right now. She could see it in his eyes. "I've wanted to do this for a long time," Matthew smirked. "Now I'm going to do it my way. Do you understand? You're not going to open your mouth at me anymore." Stacy nodded. She knew better than to argue with Matthew. He was capable of anything. As if to prove his point, the boy walked up to her and shoved her so hard that she hit her head on the wall. Then Matthew also kicked the girl in the back. It must have been a weak kick, but the sharp pain immediately spread through her body. "You know who's boss, don't you? You'll get more of that next time," Matthew said, and disappeared contentedly into the bedroom. Naturally, Stacy didn't wait for the next time. She knew it was dangerous to stay in the apartment with Matthew. He might even send her to the afterlife. His eyes were cloudy, half crazy. This was not the man Stacy had once loved. The girl stood up, waited until she was no longer dizzy, and slipped out the door. She didn't even take her things. She only grabbed the bag she hadn't had time to take off her shoulder. It contained her cell phone, her papers, the essentials. The rest was just a matter of time. The important thing was to get away from Matthew. He's a scary man, a monster, and Matthew is capable of hurting her, of maiming her. Even more than that, the girl has never been so afraid for her life. Stacy hurried down the stairs, fearing to hear the footsteps of an enraged Matthew behind her. He wouldn't think she was capable of escaping. But where would she go? She has no relatives in the middle of the night, no money either. Of course, Matthew will be furious when he finds her missing. Stacy wanted to be as far away from home as possible at that moment. The girl popped out into the cold November evening wearing a light coat, uncomfortable heeled shoes. It was cold, dark, uncomfortable. Stacy flew forward, unable to see the road. To keep warm, she jumped on the first bus she could find. It gave her time to catch her breath. Warm interior, soft seat, quiet, cheerful music, minimal passengers. Stacy stared out the window at the cityscape and wondered where to go. Nothing came to mind. Yes, Stacy had her friends Kira from work and her former classmate Mealy, but both were married with husbands and children. She didn't want to embarrass them. She started calling local hotels. As luck would have it, all the rooms were booked. What to do? "Sure," said the stern female conductor, interrupting Stacy's frantic attempts to find a place to stay. The girl inhaled and stepped out of the cozy cabin into the unsightly night. A cold rain started the evening. Stacy's coat was immediately soaked through. The girl was completely frozen. Then she saw a supermarket in the distance, a place where she could wait out the downpour and think calmly about her situation. There had to be a way out, and Stacy would find it. She would. Just have to hide from the rain first. "But I've been sitting here ever since." Stacy looked at Andrew as if waiting for his verdict. "I think we should report him to the police," the man said. "I can tell you've never been in this situation before." Stacy smiled. But when the police arrive, they'll find Matthew calm and sane. My words mean nothing. There's no sign of a beating. The police will leave and I'll be alone with Matthew. What do you think he'll do to me after that? Andrew shook his head. Yes, Stacy, of course you're completely right. Matthew will get away with it. Stacy, don't you have anywhere to go at all? No, the girl sighed sadly. Don't think anything bad. I'd like to offer you a place to stay tonight. I have a big house. I live there with my daughter. You will rest, and then decide how to proceed. What do they say? The morning is the morning. I hate to embarrass you, but I really don't have anywhere else to go. That's true, so I'll take it. Andrew realized that it was a strange, risky decision to let a complete stranger into the house, except that he couldn't leave the girl in trouble. She really needs help. It wouldn't be a big deal if Stacy slept over. Evie's nanny looked at Stacy with surprise as Andrew let her step forward into the house. But she didn't say anything. She was a professional and knew better than to meddle in the personal affairs of her employers. Evie's asleep in her room, the nanny reported. I wanted to wait for you, but you were late today. Thank you very much, and I apologize for the delay. Of course you will be compensated for those hours. I'm sure they will, Nanny smiled. You're always very generous. Andrew showed Stacy to the guest room. The girl looked around in surprise. It was probably the first time she had ever been in such an environment. High ceilings, wide staircase, stylish interior. And you only live here with your daughter? She asked. Yes, the two of us, sighed Andrew. Excuse me, but where's the girl's mom? She is no longer there, he replied sadly. Andrew has long been accustomed to this question. Many people were surprised that the father was raising his daughter alone. Make yourself comfortable. Take a hot shower, you need to warm up. The fridge is down there. Take whatever you want. There are clean robes in the guest bedroom. All in all, make yourself at home. Thank you so much, and I'm sorry to bother you, Stacy said. It's no bother at all. Andrew smiled. The main thing is that everything ends well for you. Andrew went to his room. On the way, he looked into Evie's bedroom. The girl was sleeping sweetly under the blanket, putting her hand under her cheek. Her hair was strewn across the pillow. A light blush played on her cheeks. The nightlight on the nightstand glowed faintly, as always. Evie was afraid to stay in the dark. Andrew took a quick shower, changed into his pajamas, and laid his head down on the pillow with pleasure. How tired he was today. It was a little strange to realize that there was a stranger, a complete stranger, in the house right now. But Stacy was just a confused girl in a difficult situation. She wasn't lying, Andrew could feel it. By his age, he had learned to be a pretty good judge of character. Andrew woke up from an unusual sound, glanced at the clock. It was almost 4. What's wrong? There were still hours to go before the alarm clock rang. What woke him up? The singing. It was a quiet, gentle singing, something subtly familiar, even native. Andrew raised himself on his elbow and listened. The singing seemed to be coming from Evie's bedroom. What the hell was that? And then it hit him. He remembered that Stacy, the girl with the hard luck he'd picked up from the supermarket, was sleeping at the house tonight. The man jumped up and rushed into Evie's bedroom. Why was this girl sneaking into his daughter's room? What was on her mind? Andrew wanted to rush into the nursery to give the guest an interrogation, but he was stopped by a ringing child's voice. Again. Let's do it again. My mom used to sing this song to me. Andrew cautiously peeked into the bedroom. He saw a touching picture. His daughter was lying in her crib, looking at the visitor with a smile. Stacy was sitting nearby in a high chair, stroking the girl's head and softly singing her a lullaby. Andrew remembered the song. It had once been sung by his wife to their daughter. But how had the little girl memorized it at such a young age? He froze, not believing his ears. The girl was actually talking to Stacy. She asked to sing the lullaby again and said that her mother sang it to her. Andrew's heart was pounding frantically. He was afraid to believe that his daughter had finally spoken after a long silence. Maybe he just imagined after a dream? That's it, baby girl. It's time for bed, Stacy smiled as she tucked the girl in. Good night, said the girl clearly. Andrew barely held back a sigh of surprise. "Just don't you go away. We'll see each other tomorrow, won't we?" she asked. "Yes, I'll see you," Stacy nodded. As she left the room, she ran into Andrew. "Oh, we woke you up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to," she fussed. "It's just that the girl screamed in her sleep, and I ran to soothe her with a song out of habit. She always helps my students." "But how did you know her name was Evia?" "I did not tell you," surprised Andrew. "How did you know?" Stacy was surprised. "The girl told me. We met her. Let's go into the living room. I'll try to make the suggested revisions, keeping it close to the original text. I have a serious conversation to have with you." "Okay," Stacy flapped her eyes in confusion. She couldn't understand what was going on. "Oh." In the living room, Andrew slowly and thoroughly told her Evie's story. He had to mention Kira's death and the girl's many diagnoses. You see, since Kira's death, Evie hadn't spoken a word, and then suddenly she spoke. "I didn't realize she was speechless," Stacy said, surprised. "She got in touch with me as soon as she heard the lullaby. She said her mom used to sing that song to her." "Wow, poor child still remembers, although it would seem was quite tiny then," sighed Andrew. "I have a proposal to you, since you have such a beneficial effect on Evie. You are also a teacher. You have experience in dealing with special children. Could you be a kind of nanny or teacher for my girl? You don't have a place to live now, and here you'll have your own room. I won't hurt your salary." "Wow, this is so unexpected," Stacy exclaimed. "I'd love to be Evie's nanny, but I have a job. I can't leave my students, you know." "I understand," Andrew nodded. "You don't have to sit with her all day. The main thing is to come here after work, communicate with Evie, on weekends, maybe spend some lessons with her, or just walk. Naturally, if you need time to yourself, it's not even negotiable." But at any given moment, Andrew was willing to do anything just to keep Stacy by Evie's side. That girl had worked a real miracle. But what if she suddenly disappeared and his girl went silent again? What if leaving Stacy would be a new trauma for her? Stacy stayed at Andrew's house. She turned out to be a very smiling and friendly girl. Evie loved her new nanny, or as she called her friend. Stacy always knew how to keep her entertained. They drew together, made plasticine, even embroidered. Evie was talking now. Andrew couldn't believe it. "I make edits to the text, keeping it close to the original." Strangely enough, the speech of little Evie turned out to be very literate, developed. It turns out that all this time she was learning unnoticed from others, absorbed everything like a sponge, and now quietly built beautiful and long phrases. And it also turned out that Evie is an incredibly capable girl. She had a talent for the exact sciences, Stacy had said repeatedly. She'd make a great physicist or mathematician, she repeated. Stacy was a little wrong, however. Evie turned out to be a promising computer programmer. When in the 5th grade she started computer science, the girl immediately demonstrated outstanding talents. The teacher, of course, could not help but notice it. She immediately began to send her capable student to Olympiads of various levels, and almost always Evie returned with awards. Andrew couldn't get enough of his daughter. He was very grateful to Stacy because it was thanks to her talent, or rather her gift of communicating with special children, that Evie began to speak again. Stacy was in denial. "She's not my client. She didn't have any serious diagnoses or disabilities, just stress. That's how she reacted to losing her mother. I had nothing to do with it. She would have talked sooner or later on her own." Andrew didn't agree. He knew for sure that if it weren't for Stacy, his girl would have had to go to a special school for kids with serious mental health issues. And then what would Evie be like now? By the time Evie started winning her first awards as a young programmer, Andrew and Stacy were already married. Yeah, that's what happened. They were living side by side. At first, all their conversations revolved solely around Evie, and then somehow, gradually, it became clear to both of them that there was something going on between them. They were drawn to each other. It was pointless to deny it. By the way, Evie had been involved. The clever girl saw everything, understood everything, and was very happy about it. It was she who pushed her father to make the first step. One day, Evie told Andrew straight out that it was time to ask Stacy out. "You both need a date," the 10-year-old said with a sly smile. "Go ahead, ask her to the movies." "And you do not mind?" "Why would it, I wonder?" surprised Andrew. I, on the contrary, in favor, nodded Evie. "Only next time we'll go out together somewhere. Deal?" So with Evie's encouragement, Stacy and Andrew began to meet, and then more and more. Soon it became obvious to both of them that they were literally made for each other. And so the wedding took place. Quiet, modest, but very beautiful and somehow cozy. Now Evie had a little sister, Mealy. She's 2 years old now. She is very perky and quick, just like her older sister at her age. By the way, it was Evie who chose the name for the baby. She adored her little sister, babysat her, taught her everything. Dressed up the little girl as a doll and even boasted about it in front of her many friends. Andrew was happy. He has a favorite loving wife and 2 wonderful daughters. Healthy, beautiful, intelligent. They have a close-knit family where everyone loves and supports each other. Stacy and Evie, they are like girlfriends in general. It's so nice to watch them when they do something together, cooking, discussing plans for tomorrow, choosing outfits for an event. Sometimes Andrew wondered what would have happened to him and Evie if he hadn't met Stacy at the supermarket, or would have walked past as he'd intended to do at first. Perhaps it was fate itself after all. The widow of the late doctor arrived at the old house, and barely had she gone to the village wedding. Alex had been stuck in traffic for 2 hours. Already half an hour ago, he was supposed to be at the reception organized by the investor on the occasion of his birthday. He'd driven straight from the clinic and hadn't even gone home to change. His wife Stacy called every 10 minutes to remind him not to be late. And he was late. A traffic jam this bad wasn't part of the plan. I don't know what happened out there. The cars stood dead still, shifting a meter every 5 minutes. And then stop again. All the cars behind and front on the side were already considered, and the drivers could be considered familiar. And that car overtook by half a meter. And now it was 1.5 meters behind. Some kind of entertainment, an old man in a Volga in front. Some sticks with red rags on the ends stick out of the trunk. On the left is a girl in an Audi. She talks on the phone all the time and occasionally looks at Alex with interest. On the right, the most desperate or the most brazen occasionally fly by on the side of the road. What's ahead of them is unknown. Alex wouldn't be nervous at all. Well, a traffic jam and a traffic jam. At last one could rest. But he imagined what Stacy would say to him when he got there. If he did. It's the wife calling again. "Where are you? I don't know what to say anymore. Everyone's here, asking about you. You don't realize how important it is for you to be here." "I really don't understand the importance. I don't know what I'm supposed to do there either. But I'm going. I can't fly over this traffic jam." "Can't or won't." "Stacy, I'll be there as soon as I can." Alex dropped the call. He doesn't need this reception. Let the investors talk to the clinic management. Why invite the department heads? What's the joy of celebrating a birthday in a crowd of unfamiliar people? Alex saw this investor once at the clinic, and suddenly he's honored to be invited, and with his wife. He would have preferred to go home, spend a quiet evening, read 2 interesting articles sent to him a month ago. Instead, he was going to some party where he had to keep a straight face and socialize with uninteresting people, and was indecently late. Stacy, unlike her husband, was glad of the invitation. She had rarely been able to attend receptions of this caliber. Was it not so much to look at others as to show herself? She realized that on her own, as a school teacher, no one in this high society is not interesting. But she was with her husband. And this husband, damn him to hell, can't get there. The ones who jump on the side of the road go somewhere. Maybe we should try it. Alex drove to the side of the road, skidded along the potholes for 500 meters and again found himself in a traffic jam, now on the side of the road. Further, the curb ended, and it was possible to pass only on the road. And those patiently standing in the lane were in no hurry to let those who liked freebies through. They wanted to cheat fate, so stand there now. And in another half an hour, Alex returned to the lane. A Volga with sticks and red rags loomed ahead. What he left from, he came back to. Irony of fate. Looks like he's only coming to the appointment to pick up his wife. That's fine. It's a shame about the time, though. We're finally getting going, and soon the cause of the jam became clear: a terrible accident. 3 cars and 1 truck. Rescue workers were scrambling around. People were pulled out of the cars. Then the emergency cars, like scrap metal, moved to the side of the road by machinery. 1 lane was freed for traffic. Drivers carefully drove around the crash site. Alex saw the wrecked cars of rescuers and ambulance doctors. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed a man sitting on the ground by the truck's wheel with a crazy look, clearly in shock. Alex turned towards the accident. A lifeguard immediately ran up to him. "Get back on the road. This is not a circus. I'm a trauma doctor." "Oh, well, go ahead then. You're the man for the job." There were 10 victims, all with serious injuries. A guy was badly hurt, his spine was damaged, and a young woman, whom rescuers couldn't get out of the car for a long time. Her 3-year-old daughter, frightened and crying, was examined in an ambulance. Doctors dealt with the heaviest. The others with fractures and injuries were waiting their turn. Alex had been stuck in traffic for 2 hours. He was supposed to be at the reception, organized by the investor on the occasion of his birthday, half an hour ago. He'd driven straight from the clinic and hadn't even gone home to change. His wife Stacy called every 10 minutes, reminding him not to be late, and he was late. A traffic jam this bad wasn't part of his plan. I don't know what happened. The cars stood dead still, shifting a meter every 5 minutes. Alex looked at the surrounding cars and drivers, trying to distract himself. In front was an old man driving a Volga with some sticks with red rags sticking out of its trunk. On the left, a girl in an Audi was constantly talking on the phone and occasionally glanced at Alex with interest. On the right, desperate drivers periodically pulled to the curb. Alex himself wouldn't be particularly nervous, but he imagined what Stacy would tell him when he finally arrived. If he did arrive. His wife called again. "Where are you?" "I don't know what to say anymore. Everyone's here, asking about you. You don't realize how important it is for you to be here." "I really don't understand the importance. I don't know what I'm supposed to do there either. But I'm going. I can't fly over this traffic jam," Alex answered. "Can't or won't?" Stacy kept up. "I'll be there as soon as I can," Alex said tiredly and dropped the call. He didn't feel like going to this appointment at all. Let the clinic management talk to the investors. Why call ordinary managers? To celebrate someone's birthday in a crowd of unfamiliar people. Alex has only seen this investor once. He would prefer to go home, quietly read interesting articles, rather than go to a party where you have to keep your face and talk to uninteresting people, and even be indecently late. Stacy believed that the power of words could be used to keep students from doing bad things. The main thing is to properly explain what is good and what is bad. Her sincere impulses touched the students, and they agreed not to upset the young teacher, taking a kind of patronage over her. At 13, these idealists were convinced that they knew much more about life than their naive, saintly mentor. The whole class went hiking together, watched new movies, skated or played beach volleyball. Thus, in an atmosphere of mutual illusions, Stacy brought her class to graduation. Apparently, her teaching efforts were not in vain, because after graduation her students did not disappear from her life. They congratulated her on her birthday and New Year, came to share their troubles, or just to chat. Teachers with great experience and merit believed that such trusting relations with students were an indicator of professional unsuitability. Our task is to provide education, and to make friends with students is the height of unprofessionalism. There is not enough mental strength or time for everyone, they said. Most likely they were jealous of Stacy, but for some reason they couldn't admit it. In high school, Stacy met Alex. He was 12 years older than her, a mature and confident man. His son went to this school, and one day his father came to the parent-teacher conference instead of his mom. Alex was attracted to this enthusiastic teacher with an unconventional approach to pedagogy. He divorced his wife 3 years ago and had no contact with her at all. The separation from his son was too painful. They met only occasionally. That day, Alex came to the parents' meeting for the first time in his life because his ex-wife suddenly called, threw a tantrum, and demanded that he immediately dropped all his affairs and went to the school to save his son. What to save him from, she didn't explain. Why she didn't go herself, it was clear she was in no condition. Alex realized that most likely nothing terrible had happened, but still went to the school. One should be aware of the events. And suddenly Kieran really needs to save his son, if not from the school, then from his mother. Alex hadn't seen Kieran in a while. We need to talk. He was ready to take Kieran with him, but he was afraid that his ex-wife, left alone, would go crazy. And Vincent, feeling sorry for his mother, refused to move in with his father. Alex was worried, but he didn't think it was possible to put pressure on his son. He was an adult and would figure it out on his own. After the meeting, Alex approached Stacy. He really didn't understand why his ex-wife was so hysterical. AC in physics? A conflict with a classmate isn't a disaster. It's just high school life. Unpleasant, sure, but no reason to declare a rescue mission. Stacy confirms there's no problem. Vince is a wonderful boy, a little withdrawn, but kind and talented, she said. Alex had already realized that all students were wonderful and talented to her. She would even justify a bully and find a lot of positive qualities in him. An amazing girl. There aren't many like her left. Alex always came with flowers, gallant and courteous. Stacy's friend, history teacher Kira, in common parlance Millie, colorfully told how the teachers reacted to her novel. These envious women can only discuss you. For them, teacher and nun are synonymous. You can't have a teaching career if you've got a man. Or rather, you've got the wrong guy. If you'd brought out some loser, that's a yes. And self-sufficient, independent man they will not appreciate, and therefore in your selfless labor. A happy, loved, prosperous woman. What can she teach her children? How will she prepare them for the rigors of life? Millie mocked them. You're overreacting, Stacy countered. Half of our teachers are married. Married ones are there, not happy ones. How would you know? Millie countered. Why do they make you feel bad about yourself? Why don't they just be happy for you? Tell me. If I was going to marry a good man, what would you say? I'd wish him happiness, Stacy replied sincerely. Millie was right, none of her co-workers were happy for Stacy. They were just gloating and wondering when Alex would leave her. You don't have to get married, Stacy said. You do. Don't give them anything to gloat about. There's no turning back. Stacy was in love. Alex was so serious, so thorough. He was even courting like he had a plan. It was all clearly laid out. The fact that Alex was married didn't bother Stacy. It was strange if a man had never been married by the time he was 40. What confused her was that he never said a word about his ex-wife. So many years together, they had a teenage son, and it was as if Alex had erased her from his memory. What had happened between them? Why had they divorced? Stacy wondered. Alex wouldn't tell her, just dismissed it. She's not in our lives anymore. I wouldn't think about her at all. But there's a son. I've helped him, and I'll continue to help him. Don't worry, we'll be fine. And indeed, everything was fine. They arranged a small wedding trip, rented a house for a week on the coast in Miami. Sun, sea, and no one but the two of them. They just didn't need anyone. Stacy looked at her husband, and only one thought was racing through her mind. How do I love you? How is it that of all the men on earth, I got the best one? She was ready to stare into his gray, most beautiful eyes in the world all day long. No one had ever been so happy. Stacy began to doubt her mental faculties, for she could think of nothing but her husband. Only love and happiness. In all the years that followed, when longing struck, Stacy remembered that week of boundless happiness on the ocean, and it warmed her heart. She longed to return to that place and experience the same feelings again, to remember what it was like to be truly happy. 7 years of life together flew by unnoticed. Love, of course, did not go away, but it became ordinary, not causing the same excitement. When Alex didn't show up for that important appointment at the clinic, Stacy took offense. He'd left her alone among strangers. No one cared about her. Her co-workers tried not to leave her alone, but everyone was vapid. Stacy felt superfluous. When someone looked at her, she felt like she was being pitied, perplexed as to who she was and what she was doing here. She was still hoping Alex would come. When he stopped answering his cell phone, Stacy hailed a cab and headed home. She'd had enough of this embarrassment. At home, she stood in front of the mirror. A tall, slender woman in an elegant dress, with a beautiful, intelligent face, looked back at her. She felt sorry for this beauty, she cried. She had been preparing so much, dreaming that everyone would appreciate their beautiful couple, would say compliments, and Alex would be proud of his wife. Instead of compliments, indifference. Instead of a pleasant evening, longing and loneliness. Stacy cried until midnight, then got angry. Then she calmed down, deciding that she shouldn't get worked up. Alex was about to come and explain everything. He did come, but Stacy waited in vain. No explanation or apology followed. Alex didn't even ask how the evening had gone. Either he didn't remember the reception or he thought it was nothing. Stacy couldn't take it anymore, walked over to her husband, snatched the magazine from his hands, threw it on the floor, and asked, looking into his surprised eyes, "Where did you go yesterday? Aren't you interested in how I had fun? You left me alone and now you won't even explain." "Stacy, I'm tired," Alex replied, picking up the magazine from the floor and continuing to read it. And that was it. No more explanations followed. That's how indifferent it was, just impenetrable. How badly it made my soul feel. What should I do to make him come out of his shell and show some feelings? Change him, or what? Die, maybe. I wonder if he'll notice. Probably just happy to be distracted from work again. Another sleepless night and desperate loneliness in the morning. This morning was neither good nor wise. At any rate, neither were the evenings. Not a single wise thought came during the night. What to do with a personal life that was going downhill? Stacy decided to take the tried and true route. She should go to Millie's. She always had a way of setting things right. Millie's loyal friend was a big fan of Alex, thought Stacy was complaining about her fat. There are no husbands like her anymore, and you can tell from experience. Millie had been married twice over the years and considered herself an expert on husbands, both her own and other people's. Her first husband was an artist, a musician, a poet, 3 in 1. Life with him was a total celebration, a wrench in the air. Millie said that mostly in her head he was fun and unpredictable. An unrecognized talent, an unaccomplished genius. A bohemian, a boy who hadn't grown up. Husbands are like trained animals in the circus, Millie said. He seems to be trained, but it's not clear what to expect from him. And we lived in starvation from lack of money. Millie went to the other extreme. Her second husband was a boring middle-class bureaucrat. Not young, unattractive, but with means and connections. The presence of a young and beautiful wife sharply raised his authority in the eyes of colleagues. So he spared no expense on his doll. In addition, his wife a schoolteacher, somehow out of status, so now Millie taught at the university. All would be nothing, but tolerate his boring Millie long could not. She got divorced and got a good apartment in the city center from a miser as a payoff. Now she was in full chocolate and in the active search for the next husband. Millie sincerely thought that her friend was lucky. Alex is handsome, smart, and a great doctor. Not boring, doesn't drink, doesn't cheat. What more do you need? She'd never had a love like Stacy's before. All she could do was dream and envy. Stacy showed up looking as gloomy as a cloud with tears in her eyes. "Why don't you have a quiet life?" Millie asked. "He doesn't notice me at all. If I disappear, he'll only realize when he can't find supper. And supper isn't always at home, so he won't find it right away. He doesn't care about me at all. Remember when I went to college, I consulted with him. I couldn't make up my mind. A month ago, he asked me how I was doing in school." "Stacy, are you exaggerating? I don't get the image of Alex in my head. It's not about him. He's a reasonable man. Yeah, he's very busy with work, but that's good. Who's so obsessed with work that they forget their wife at appointments? You think he's got a woman?" "No, he doesn't. But maybe it would be better. At least it would be clearer. You, girlfriend, don't take it out on your husband. He's tired, he'll come to his senses, and everything will be fine. For a man like your Alex, you'll have to look harder." "What man?" Stacy was outraged. "I'll throw him out, take him to the woods and leave him there." "I'm sorry to hear that," Millie grinned. "Stacy, my friend, where are you?" "I don't need this. What are you doing? If you throw him out, they'll pick him up. Look, I really don't understand what's wrong with you. There's no such thing as crazy love for life. You've had it. But I haven't. 2 husbands, and not one heavenly love. You're a lucky girl. Don't make God angry. Maybe you're right. Stacy sighed. What's the matter? I'm coming at you again with my melancholy. You're welcome. I'm always at your service. A few days later, all the news programs started with breaking news from Alaska. Another earthquake had struck there. The country watched with bated breath the statistics of dead and wounded. Rescuers and doctors from all over the country flew to Alaska. Alex was going to be part of one of the teams. Stacy, you have to understand, I can't not go, because I'm needed there now, he said. Don't worry, I'll be home in a week. Stacy watched the news like a bulletin from the front. One day she saw Alex in a story about doctors. Worried, she called him. He answered. Her heart ached. She chased away the dark thoughts. What could happen? He doesn't go into the rubble. He helps those who have already been harassed. Suddenly there was a new jolt. More dead and wounded. Alex didn't call for 2 days. He didn't answer the phone. Finally a call. No, it's not Alex. It's an unfamiliar number. Yeah, I'm listening, Stacy answered. Stacy? It's for you. Your husband Alex was killed in Anchorage during a debris removal in the village of New Life. I'm so sorry for your loss. We're covering all transportation costs. What's not covered? What transportation? Are they talking about Alex? What do you mean, dead? Is everyone out of their minds? Stacy dialed Alex's number. He wasn't answering for some reason. She heard a ringing in her ears. Then there was a rumbling sound of someone banging on the door. She got up, went to the door, stood looking at it, not understanding how to open it. Something unpleasant had been said to her. She couldn't remember what. Who was knocking like that? There's a bell, isn't there? Stacy opened the door. Behind her stood Alex and fellow doctors from the clinic. What's up? Are they here? It's not Alex's birthday, she said absently. Suddenly it was clear in her head, dead. Condolences. Stacy didn't remember anything else. She woke up when the coffin was lowered into the grave, screaming, rushing in. She was held, thrashing in someone's arms and screaming. Then the memory lapsed again. Like Millie and Vince were saying something, feeding her something. When she came to, she was surprised she was alive. No, not surprised. I was upset. Why alive? Millie, like a guardian angel, was always there to keep Stacy from falling into the abyss. She calmed her down, persuaded her, drew prospects, pushed her into action. In short, after a couple months, Stacy could be talked to without fear of going crazy. To be honest, Millie hadn't expected Stacy to be so out of it. I get it. A loved one had died, but to throw herself so out of her life. Millie looked after Stacy herself. Gradually, she came to her senses, went back to her normal life. It was depressing, but it was manageable. The I can't live without him thoughts were gone. At least she tried. Things gradually settled down. Stacy shuddered at night, cried. Sometimes she even forgot to grieve during the day. Then she remembered, but she didn't grieve as much. It was almost 6 months after Alex's death. Then one day Millie suddenly asked, Stacy, have you applied for an inheritance? What application? Why? Well, your husband had assets like this apartment. It's his apartment, by the way. Here. And he has a son, an heir. The ex-wife can't claim, but the son can. I'm guessing you and Vince are going to have to share the apartment. And if he doesn't inherit, there's nothing to split. So get the deed to a notary tomorrow. That doesn't make any sense. It hadn't occurred to Stacy that she'd have to share the apartment she'd lived in for so many years, used to thinking of it as hers. It was only now, after Millie's words, that she realized she wasn't. She's a resident. She can't be kicked out, but it's not her apartment. The notary was a young girl with a stern look, and not at all respectable hair, a ponytail on top of her head. She looked at the documents, accepted Stacy's application, and explained thoroughly that she would inherit half of the apartment, half of the car, and half of the dacha by law. She advised her to negotiate with the second heir, Vince, for the child. How do we divide it all up? Who gets the car? Who gets the cottage? Who gets the apartment? Stacy was prepared to give up the car and the summer house if they'd let her stay in the apartment. She just didn't have anywhere else to live. She knew it wasn't equal. Vince probably wouldn't mind, but his mother was still there. Some strange notice came in about land and property tax arrears. Stacy thought at first it was for the cottage and the apartment. But why in her name? The all-knowing Millie advised her to go to the registry and find out what was going on. Oh, that counselor. I'm having second thoughts. That's not good, Stacy sighed. I wouldn't be surprised if Alex's ex-wife was up to something. But signing the property over to me so I don't have to pay taxes. That's stupid, even for her. And last year's taxes. Maybe Alex signed something over to me. We didn't buy anything. Everything we own was bought a long time ago. The registry gave Stacy a deed to a 53-square-foot lot and house in Brooklyn Village. Brooklyn who? What house? I've got an apartment to take care of. The only thing missing was the house. She was upset. Life was getting a little too stressful. Unable to understand, Stacy called Alex's friend and colleague Joshua. But Joshua, did Alex say something to you about a house in the country? You mean Brooklyn? It's a nice cabin. I loved it. Janie and I stayed there for a month last year. Alex said he bought it for the future, and he's going to build it into a cottage and live there when he retires. Why didn't I know about this? And why did he put it in my name? I can understand that. He's older than you. Probably wanted you to have something of your own in case something happened to him. He didn't tell you because he didn't have to. He wanted to build a palace for the princess first, and then bring the princess to the palace. Who knew he wouldn't make it in time? Oh, I'm sorry. What are we going to do with this palace now? Whatever you want. But I wouldn't sell it if I were you. It's a wonderful place. You should go and see it. The doorbell rang. Stacy said a quick goodbye to Joshua and went to answer it. Standing outside the door was an inebriated woman with permanently dyed red hair. The woman shook her red curls. Without waiting for an invitation, she entered the apartment and walked through the rooms. Who are you? Stacy asked. Me. My son Vince owns this apartment. I want to live with my son. You don't have kids, you don't understand. I'm going to live with my son. But Vince only owns half of the apartment, and the other half is mine, Stacy argued. Great. We'll live together. I don't mind roommates. How are we going to divide up the rooms? Look, you can't be serious. We can't live in the same apartment. I don't want to. Well, if you don't leave, we'll have to. Think about it. I'll bring my stuff the day after tomorrow. Bye. What do we do now? What do you do in a situation like this? You run to a friend. So Stacy went to Millie's. She called Vince, asked him to come over. I wanted to know if the idea of living together was his mom's fantasy or their decision. Vince wasn't reassured. His mother's decision was Alex's revenge, albeit belated, to get Stacy out of the apartment. Vince had urged his mother, offered her options. But she wouldn't listen. She didn't want the apartment so much as she wanted to show her power. She's not going to give up. She's going to ruin her life any way she can. Vince left. Her friends were left to grieve. Why don't you buy half the apartment off her? If it's not enough money, I'll add to it, Millie suggested. I'm afraid she won't sell. It's important to her to humiliate me. She's dreaming about how she's going to humiliate me, ruin my life. She won't take any money for that kind of pleasure. Vince knows it's impossible to live like this, but he can't do anything about it. She's got this idea to move in with me. It's fun and revenge for her miserable life. You should have seen her. She has a goal to kill me. That's the kind of fun she'd like to have. Listen, is this crazy woman seriously going to live with the widow of her ex-husband? Millie was horrified. Apparently so. Moving in with me, she will live for now, but then it will still need something to do with the apartment to decide to sell, to divide. Well, you've been on the prowl, and I've been running around. No, friend, I'm not my enemy. I don't want to be without you. Who do you want to be with? Living with that crazy woman in the same apartment. I'm not seriously considering it myself, Stacy said. I have an unfinished palace. I'm going to go check it out. Where? The country? It's in the middle of nowhere. No, it's not. I looked. It's only 200 kilometers away. I need to recover. I'll go, then I'll wake up and decide how to live my life. Millie, I feel like I need this. If I don't try to start over, I'm gonna die. I don't know. Maybe it will work, Millie said doubtfully. It seemed like a decision had been made. But it was so scary to change her established, stable life for the unknown prospect of living in a village Stacy had never been to. But then some builders showed up, measuring the height of the opening and asking which walls were load-bearing. Clearly, they were doing a huge renovation. "Are you registered here?" the woman asked. "Well, live here. No one is forcing you out. We have a reservation." Stacy quickly put her things in her bag and rushed to the bus station. Didn't wait for the red-headed vigilante to show up. Enough with the nerves. Though in the queue at the ticket office, she suddenly remembered that she had a car. She was kicked out of her apartment, so at least she could have her car. I didn't doubt that they would track her car. They wouldn't deny themselves such a pleasure. But for now, we can drive to the village. Where am I going? What for? How will I live? I'll figure it out when I get there. Strange village. Not a lantern, not a light. The time is 21:00, and the village is dead. Either they're asleep or there's no light. Where do we go from here? Where's the heir to the estate? Yeah, there's people here. Apparently the car is a novelty around here. Crawled out to have a look. At least they'll tell us where to go. They did. But they looked warily what kind of a lady brought here at night. And there's really no light. There's probably a candle somewhere, but how do you find it around here? Stacy shined the flashlight on her phone. She found the bed and went to sleep. I'll figure it out tomorrow. She couldn't sleep with hunger. She broke all the cookies she'd taken on the road. There was nothing else to sleep on. Stacy didn't immediately realize where she was. Oh yes, the village. No lights, but there was a manor. I'd have to look around. I'm also very hungry. Is there a store here? Stacy's house was impressive. Nice furniture, big windows, curtains, dishes, fridge, TV, everything. You could tell Alex really wanted to live here. Everything's been thought out and arranged with love. He didn't tell her anything, but he made it look like he'd consulted her. Stacy wouldn't change a thing about this house. She loved it. The house was neglected and unkept, but that was fixable. Stacy stepped out onto the porch. It's beautiful. It's like a garden. Lilacs in bloom, pink apple trees, some shrubs she didn't know the names of. Unsupervised raspberries grow all over the plot. Under the apple trees in a thicket of burdock stands a table, a swing hanging from a branch. The ropes are almost rotten. Behind the house, impassable cherry tree stands a solid white wall. Then I'll have to climb the plot to see what else grows here. But now it's not about flowers and berries. I have to find a store and buy groceries. Because I'm so hungry, I feel dizzy. There was salt, sugar, macaroni, a pack of tea, and a bottle of sunflower oil in the refrigerator, which was turned off. Probably hidden from the mice. Stacy took out the groceries, turned on the refrigerator, and went looking for the store. A woman in her 60s looked at her curiously from behind a neighboring fence. "Daughter, who do you think you are?" The house was empty. Today I saw someone walking around the yard. The owner, Alex, is here, a doctor from the city. Are you his wife? She called out. Widow Stacy said the word aloud for the first time. It was sharp, harsh, hopeless. It divided life into before and after. "Oh, I'm sorry, you old fool. I'm minding my own business," the woman said. "My name is Esmeralda, Aunt Esme, and what's yours?" "Stacy. Can you tell me where your store is?" "It's right down the street. It's right downtown. It's got the store, the school, the administration. You'll have to come and see me if you need anything." "Thank you, Aunt Esmeralda." Stacy walked down the street, looking around the village. It was interesting and completely different from her idea of rural life. Once upon a time, while still in college, she had traveled to visit her friend Maggie. It had been her first and only experience of village life. Since then, Stacy was sure that the countryside was dusty streets with lush grass, old houses and vegetable gardens with potatoes and cucumbers. And certainly no decorations in the form of flowers and ornamental bushes. A village is poverty, lack of amenities, and hard work. It's no place for flowers. Whether that village was in the middle of nowhere, or whether things had changed dramatically over time. But now Stacy was pleasantly surprised. In Pokrovka there were good houses. In front of each yard there was a well-tended front garden. Even the streets were not gray and dusty, but green, with flowering trees and bushes. The appearance of a new person in the village was an event. As they walked toward the store, curious eyes peered from behind every fence. 15 times Stacy said hello and explained who she was. Vigilance in the village was at an all-time high. No one passed unnoticed. Somehow the rumors got to the store before Stacy did. 10 people came to see the town girl. The store was full. Nobody bought anything. That's not why they came. They waited, wondering why she'd come and how long she could hold out. They're not evil people, but they're wary of anything new. They know their own people inside and out. It's clear what to expect from whom. This one will give his shirt off his back, the same spender. This one's eager to help. This one's a slacker. But they're all family members. And here's someone who's arrived. They say she's young and beautiful. That's a problem too. There are only 3 single men in the village. We don't have enough. And there's competition. They looked at Stacy frankly and appraisingly. They were careful to ask questions. You're beautiful. Are you coming here for a long time or just for a week? No, I'm not staying for a week. I don't know how long, though. What are you going to do? You must be some kind of manager, right? Or a designer. You don't know how to work with your hands in the city. Yeah, I'm not much of a teacher. That's good. We have a big school. We need teachers. But it's hard to live in the countryside. In winter it gets so snowy you can't leave the house. At least we have gas, so we don't have to heat the stoves. And you can't live without a vegetable garden. And they don't bring vegetables here. Aunt Kate didn't scare the man who attacked Stacy. The sales clerk did. I don't carry vegetables. You're not going to buy them. If I have to, I will. No way. Who eats these store-bought vegetables? Can't we share cucumbers and tomatoes? You, daughter, come to my place. I still have some potatoes and carrots left, and I'll give them to you. Thank you. Ladies, are you going to buy anything? If not, go with God. It's like a social club in here. Stacy picked up some groceries. It's a little heavy. We need a bucket, a mop, dishwashing detergent, window cleaner, and a few other little things. I can't carry everything. Are you going to clean up? The salesgirl asked. Well, yes. The house has been closed since last summer. The dirt has accumulated. Let's do it this way. You take what you need now. I'll bring the rest of the stuff along with all the cleaning supplies in a couple hours. My husband's coming home for lunch, so we'll load everything up. And after work, I'll come and help. You're going to be cleaning this house for a week. My name's Digit, by the way. Yeah, that's a little awkward. Come on, I'm curious about you. I'm curious about what kind of bird you are. Let's get to know each other. Oh, I'm Stacy. You don't have to tell me. The whole village knows. Stacy came out of the store, looked around. Here's the school. You can see the kids running around in the yard. It's either gym class or practice or something. I should stop by and see what jobs they have. See if I really have to stay here. So where do we start our new life? Should we make some food? No, sandwich and tea first, then cooking. You're going to choke on your own saliva. After the sandwich, Stacy thought things were looking good. Life was getting better. Now Digit's bringing in some household chemicals. The first thing to do is clean the windows to get some sunshine and shine. Stacy looked around the house. The gray furniture, the dull windows, the dusty curtains. If everything was washed, it would be cozy. Where's Digit? I can't wait. Digit arrived, as promised, with a young man. A handsome, smiling blonde. Maybe not a fiancé, he was interested, looking interested, clearly trying to please Digit. His name was Alex. Okay, we're off. Alex has to go to work. Digit pushed Alex towards the door. I'll pick up Millie from the garden tonight and come over. What Millie? Stacy didn't understand, but Digit was already running to the car. Millie turned out to be a little red-haired girl named Alice, Digit's daughter. The work went faster with the helpers. and in the course of the evening they had cleaned most of the house. There were still some little things left to do. Tired, but encouraged by the result, sat down to drink tea. But Millie didn't make it to tea, she fell asleep. Digit, who's Alex? They say there are only 3 single men here. One of the 3 was killed, Stacy asked. You should have seen those bachelors, laughed Digit. The most eligible one is Uncle Vincent. He's about 60 years old. You're not going to get anything. He's been courting your neighbor Aunt Esmeralda for about 30 of his 60 years. For as long as I can remember, he's been doing it all his life. He can't make up his mind to propose. And the second bachelor doesn't get a second look from even the most stale 40-year-olds. Nick went to school in the big city. They say he's a computer genius, works from home, lives with his mom, doesn't go anywhere, doesn't talk to anyone. His mom said he was married. The village doesn't believe it. Someone thinks he is abnormal, but everyone agreed he is unfit for socializing, much less marriage. The headmaster didn't mind. It's a good thing, but impossible. In the school for several years did not work gymnasium. There was no money for repairs. The hall is almost emergency. Physical education lessons were held outside, running and soccer in summer, skiing in winter. Then Kiran, the athlete's name, disappeared from the village for a while. Then he came back with a decision to finance the renovation of the gym and a coaching position. That's when it turned out that Kiran, a 3-time national boxing champion, lives in their village. True, he hasn't performed for a long time. He refused to participate in the world championship. And why no one knows how he ended up in this village is also a mystery. But the locals were sure that there was a woman involved. His daughter was also not candid with anyone, seriously engaged in boxing. Kiran took her to district and regional competitions. Our girls, of course, became animated, poked fun at him and so, but to no avail. He's kind of withdrawn and unsociable. It's like he and his daughter don't need anyone at all. He's only friends with Andrew. But that's how we call the school principal. His real name is Alexander Sergeyevich Voloshin. As bachelors, everything is clear. But where did you get your Alex? Or is he married? Stacy asked. No way. It's too expensive to get involved with married people here, said Digit. We've had a couple of stories like that around here. They didn't end well. Alex is from a neighboring village not far from here. It was a big village with a big school. Kids from neighboring villages went to school here. The school bus brought those who lived close by. The children from the distant villages lived in a boarding school. Digit and Alex had known each other since they were in the 1st grade. As Alex told Alex later, he fell in love with Digit in the 4th grade. Digit was a girl with a lot of wind. She liked one boy or the other. It wasn't until her senior year of high school that she noticed Alex. But what a love it was, a real, youthful love. For life, of course. When it was impossible to breathe without each other, they drew a calendar and crossed off the days until their 18th birthday, when they could get married. Digit's parents weren't against her relationship with Alex, but thought it was a little early to go into the army. Then fine. Digit enrolled in Lyceum. Alex went into the army. In the city, Digit was surrounded by new life, impressions, acquaintances, new love. Digit became pregnant, and the future father suddenly disappeared, not appreciating the happiness that happened. Digit cried and went back to her mother. She cried too and said the usual "I told you so." She hugged her wayward daughter and began to prepare for the birth of the baby. Digit avoided Alex. She was ashamed to look him in the eye, but at night she cried, pitying her first love. That was it. Her love life was over. She would have no love, no family. One joy, red-haired Alice, her mother's happiness. Alex couldn't get over his Digit, tried to live without her, but it didn't work. You know, Stacy, he says he can't live without me. We need to be together. After all, we've lost so much time, said Digit, relaying her friend's words. I don't believe it. How can you forgive betrayal? I chose my destiny. I'm fine, and I don't need anyone. And he just keeps coming and coming. Everything's fine. My eyes are wet, replied Digit. She chose her fate. Ask your fate if she doesn't like your choices. You've been given a chance to get it all back, to be happy. So grab it. Why are you showing off your pride? Stacy said. I can't get anything back. Not a chance. Oh, Stacy, I'm sorry. I'm just sitting here complaining. Silly me. Digit, if you love me, don't be stupid. Now, You've made your mistakes, don't make another one. You'll never forgive yourself. Oh look, there's plenty of time. Digit picked up a sleepy Alice. Oh my darling. It's a shame to wake her up, but she's a big girl. Not Nika. Okay, bye. I'll see you tomorrow. Digit. Thanks for your help. It's a lot of work. Don't kid yourself. For a couple more days, Stacy tidied up and shined. The house was clean, cozy, lived in. It's beautiful. If she could just get the grounds sorted out, it would be a manor house. But Stacy couldn't tackle the grounds alone. She'd need a lot of muscle. All right, we'll do it slowly. Sitting at home all day was getting a bit boring. Stacy decided it was time to go out, at least to school. Stacy had imagined the headmaster of the village school to be old, fat, with glasses, shortness of breath, and the tired look of a troubled man. But he turned out to be young and energetic. When Andrew learned that a certified, experienced Russian teacher had come to visit him, he was overjoyed. "Stacy, you have no idea how we work here," he said. "I am a math teacher, and I also teach physics. A chemist teaches biology, geography, and a history teacher teaches Russian. You understand what level of knowledge? The only foreign language we have is German. And there are no other teachers. We study in 2 shifts. Not because there are too many students, not because there's not enough space, but because there aren't enough teachers. Come on, I'll show you the school." Andrew talked about the school only in the superlative. He was proud. Stacy hadn't expected that a school in the countryside could be as well equipped as any city school. The chemistry lab, the computer lab, the language class, everything was top-notch. Maybe the repairs are simpler, but the atmosphere is home-like. "It's cozy," Stacy said in the gym. A boxing ring was set up in the far corner. Students crowded around it. From the excitement and cheers, something very interesting was going on. Stacy didn't understand anything about boxing, thinking it was a martial art. What kind of sport is it where they hit each other over the head all the time? Andrew walked toward the ring. Stacy preferred to watch from a distance. She can't even watch it on TV, much less live. In the ring, the fight was over and the athletes took off their helmets. Stacy was amazed to see that it was a girl waving her fists. Short, frail, pretty, about 15 years old. The coach came up to her. Tall, strong, with powerful arms, he hugged the girl, said something, and she nodded and agreed. Kiran. The principal waved his hand at the coach. "Come here, Alex, I have a training session." "Your training will wait," said Andrew. "Go," I said. But he addressed Kiran by his first name in front of the students. That's fine if they're friends, but there are professional ethics. After all, a blow to the head doesn't go unnoticed. Stacy, the principal, addressed the new teacher. "This is Kiran, the coach. He's got all the boys from the village here. He's got the little ones and the ones who've left school. Kiran, Stacy will be teaching Russian, I hope." "Hello," said the coach. Up close, he looked huge. He looked at me with a frown, not at all friendly. He did not care about his new colleague, about the Russian language. A rude bore. At least he pretended it was nice to meet you. I'm surprised his children aren't afraid of him. A girl who had just fought in the ring approached them. "This is Joshua." Andrew smiled. "Our pride, a champion of the district and winner of regional competitions. Dad says she's very capable. She belongs in big sports." "That's my daughter," Kiran muttered. "I'm sorry, it's probably none of my business. But aren't you afraid for your daughter?" "It's not a woman's sport," said Stacy. "It's none of your business," said the coach. "Okay, that's it. We're done talking. Time to go. Andrew, thanks for the tour. I'll bring the documents tomorrow. Bye." Stacy walked towards the exit of the gym. She heard the principal quietly reprimanding Kiran. "Are you out of your mind? What do you want? Bear horny. You're not mad at Daddy?" Stacy caught up with the boxer girl. He promised with his boxers. He forgot how to talk to women. "How are you guys settling in here? Do you want me to help you?" "I'm afraid Daddy would mind." "No, he won't. He's not mean, he's just unhappy. He needs to come out of his shell and socialize. He doesn't want to. He's not here either. Let's be friends. And Dad, I'm sorry, I know he's in his own words. His conscience is killing him. He'll apologize tomorrow. Okay, we'll see. Hey Joshua, come by if you get bored. She's such a sweet girl. And she loves her daddy, Stacy thought. I wonder why she called him miserable. Something terrible must have happened. If a person is so closed in on himself, shut off from everyone with his ostentatious indifference and deliberate rudeness. Stacy liked the school and Principal Andrew. She decided she would be comfortable in her new job. One unpleasant person doesn't make the weather, and she's not interested in boxing. So Coach Kieran could be ignored, communication minimized. She was starting a new life, excited about the changes that were coming. No one would be able to throw her off her joyous mood. Not even someone as unpleasant as Kieran. Stacy caught herself thinking that whatever she was thinking about was being lumped in with that coach. That was just what was missing. What did she care about him? Stacy brought her diploma and employment history to school, wrote her application, and was hired to Andrew's outright glee. Too bad it's the end of the school year. But starting in September, everything will go according to plan. And now there is time to assess the equipment of the classroom, something to add, correct, prepare a curriculum. Joshua often came in, chatting and helping. Although Stacy had vowed not to talk to Kieran, she had to see him. He looked for and found her in the Russian language room after training. By the way, for the scene of acquaintance, he, as Joshua said, apologized. Communication was very low-key, hello, goodbye, how are you? Stacy finally got to work on the property. It took a long time to gather her courage, telling herself that it was no big deal, that other people could handle it. In full uniform, gloves, galoshes, with a shovel and hacksaw, went to war on cherry bushes up to 1/2 meter high. I dug, but no way they have roots, to the center of the earth, or what, grow to the center of the earth. I was digging something out, sawing something. I got tired, sat down under the apple tree, and got upset. There's enough to saw or not to saw for the whole summer. So tired, so frustrated. Evie caught her. Stacy, you can't do this. It's going to take a lot of heavy lifting. I'll tell my dad, he can help. No, that's not a good idea. No, it's not a bad idea. It's vacation time. School kids don't go to practice, only adults. That's 3 times a week. He made borscht yesterday out of idleness. Soon he'll start cross-stitching. He'd better do his niece more good by virtue of his great stature. The next day, Kieran came. Stacy felt so embarrassed. He'd think she was the sort of girl who'd look for an excuse to lure him into the house. Every single woman in the village tried that. I don't want anything, she said. I didn't ask for it. I can manage on my own. She thought Kieran grinned. That's a waste, Stacy thought. The awkwardness was gone. So angry, he grinned. You'll only be needed as a tractor, she jerked her chin and pointed with a royal gesture, the shovel is over there. Kieran was visible from the window first. She pretended not to be at all interested in what he was doing there, but she tried to peek discreetly. No sympathy for this man with a nasty temper, of course. But to say he wasn't handsome would be a sin against the truth. Then Kieran moved to another corner. You couldn't see him from the window. Stacy fiddled around. No, she couldn't see him. After about 3 hours, Stacy thought she was being indecent. He's working hard, and she didn't even offer him water. She took the bottle, walked behind the house, and was stunned to see there were no bushes. 5 gorgeous cherry trees along the fence, some bushes. Just a delight. Kieran was tired and asked for water to wash his face. Stacy brought a bucket of water. Kieran took off his t-shirt and splashed in the bucket. Stacy didn't look, but her eyes somehow squinted in that direction. Digit came through the wicket. Wow, she whispered. What's with the mating games? Why, it's the season, isn't it? Isn't it? Isn't it? What are you talking about? Stacy was outraged. He was sent to me with the idea of making friends with you two. He's worried about his daddy. I'd be worried too if I were you. You're a good daddy, but he's no good for you, smirked Digit. He's no good for friendship. Only for love. Digit, stop mocking me. What are you here for? If you're visiting, shall we go inside? No, Stacy, I'm not visiting. I'm here to formally invite you to the wedding. Oh, you've really made up your mind, haven't you? You've brainwashed me so much I realize there's no more time to waste. The wedding's in a month. Of course, I could have brought the invitations later. But I'm so excited, I wanted to share it with someone. Digit turned to Kieran. Can you hear me? I'm inviting you to the wedding. Why him? Stacy whispered so Kieran wouldn't hear. You don't know him at all. It's a whim of mine. I invite whoever I want. Digit waved her hand. Well, I'm off, the groom's waiting. Digit left. Kieran sat on the porch and Stacy didn't know what to do next. She was grateful, of course. Maybe she should take him out to dinner. She envisioned lunch, sitting across from each other, chewing and not saying a word. It's like a romantic date. If she didn't think of something now, he'd leave. Isn't that what she dreamed of? And now what? You're looking for a reason to delay. What, did you like him or inspire him? You want to get married? Yes, I did. I can't hide it. Not everyone would go to a woman who shows her disdain to uproot a cherry tree. Besides, he's so cute. Stacy hadn't thought of what to say yet, but Kieran had already put on his shirt and was about to leave. Evie saved the situation. She flew into the courtyard and gabbled. Oh, Daddy, I'm glad you're still here. Let's take Stacy to dinner. Stacy, you have no idea how good a cook he is. He also plays the guitar. What, at the same time? Stacy grinned. No, alternating. So, is it settled? Have you and your dad agreed on this proposal? Well, I don't mind, Kieran cut in. That's it. It's settled. We'll see you tonight. They left, and Stacy was surprised. Wow, this is all working out so well. I didn't have to make the first move myself. Kieran and Evie were walking home and he was singing. You're a clever and beautiful girl, but I think it's time you were whipped. Dad, you weren't faking it, were you? I see you like Stacy, don't you? What would you do without me? Thank you. Thank you. You'd be running around in circles for another year. It's too late for a whipping. 10 years too late, Kieran grinned. Stacy was going out, pulling out almost her entire closet to find an outfit that wasn't too flashy. He'd think she'd dressed up for him. It's boring. It's unfashionable. Here's a light-colored sundress with little flowers. Modest, but tasteful. God, if someone told me that I would dress up and be nervous before a meeting with a former athlete, desirable, I would spit in his face. That's how fate turned, Stacy thought as she dressed up and worried. So she got dressed up and went out. And then Aunt Esmeralda peeked out from behind the fence. In this village you can't go anywhere without supervision. Well, where are you dressed up? She asked. He's a good man, he's doing the right thing. Stacy realized that the village was already aware of their affair and was counting when the wedding was to take place. It's understandable to be bored and want to be colorful, but not to this extent, she thought. Though let them count, maybe it will come in handy. Dinner had been excellent. I couldn't believe Kieran had made it. How could she not? There's no restaurants here you can't order in. Evie was radiant, talking only about Daddy, how wonderful he was and what a sporting career he'd had. The girl really wanted Daddy to be happy. She remembered Mommy, remembered what love was like. But Mom is gone. She couldn't let her daddy live his life alone. She really liked Stacy. And she noticed that Stacy was looking at Daddy with interest. Evie's goal was to get them together. And if a child is up to something, parents are powerless. Kieran and Stacy had another fight. Everything was fine, talking, joking. Turns out Kieran isn't a letter at all. He's a very nice person. Stacy, who put you up to this? She's been going on about boxing not being a sport for girls. It's like stepping on a sore spot. For years, Kieran's been instilling in his daughter a fighter's character. Almost raised a champion. Now some inner-city franchise teacher who knows nothing about professional sports says his daughter should give up boxing. Yes, they embroider cross-stitch, but she can stand up for herself, resented Kieran. If someone hurts you, you will cry, but she will fight back. She'll grow up to be a strong sportswoman. Maybe it's my ambition. But I want my daughter to be a champion. If you had kids, you'd understand. He was hurt. This woman doesn't know anything, but her words hurt. He finally liked a man, but it was like they were from different universes. They couldn't understand each other. Stacy walked home. Evie caught up with her. "Evie, go home. I'm sorry I hurt your daddy again. There's something I want to tell you. I think it's time." Kieran and Kira were a nationally known couple. He was a Russian champion, a brutal macho, virile and strong. She was a slim and delicate model whose photos were everywhere on billboards, on TV, on the internet. Kira gave up her career as soon as she found out she was pregnant. No doubt she does not need this whole show business, house, husband, child, nothing else. The birth was awaited with trepidation. The name was chosen long and carefully, but they did not agree. Kira wanted to call her daughter Jessica. She loved the sea very much. Kieran insisted on Evie. When Evie was born, the parents thought it was a miracle. It was useless to say that they were not the first, they were not the last, and others also had children, others just had children. But theirs was a miracle. Kieran wanted his daughter to be called Evie, so he secretly registered the child from Kira and brought the birth certificate, which clearly said Adams Evie Kiranovna. Kira loved her husband so much that she didn't take offense and didn't say a word against it. Evie. So Evie, no matter what you call it, still a miracle extraordinary. Kira took care of the house and the baby. Kieran was lost in training and competitions. He became Russian champion 3 times and was going to the World Championships. And he was 6 years old when his mom got sick. Evie didn't understand what her mom was sick with, but she saw that her mom was in a lot of pain. It's now she knows that mom had advanced stage cancer. They tried to treat her, looked for specialists, wrote to foreign clinics, all in vain. The worst thing was the feeling of hopelessness, the impossibility to change anything. Kieran never left his wife's side. Constant care, medication by the hour. Everyone knew Kira was dying, tried to keep her with him for a while. After his wife's death, Kieran refused to take part in the World Championships, and the risk was too great to entrust Evie to his relatives. He couldn't leave her to anyone, not even for a day. It seemed to betray Kira. The sports career was over, only coaching was left. And Evie dragged him everywhere with him. Slowly he started coaching. She liked it, and she had the ability. His pupils consistently became prize winners in competitions. He was proud of their successes. Life settled down. The longing for Kira did not go anywhere, but somehow subsided. But then the management of the club changed, and the new director began to hint that medals are good, but money is better. Kieran was not going to mix sport and business. He quit his job and moved to the countryside with his daughter. "At least things are fair here," he said. While Evie sat in Stacy's kitchen, her dad poured his heart out to Vincent. "What about it?" "No. Look, it pisses me off. What kind of woman is she? Everything's wrong." "Well, don't go to her, come on." "I can't. As much as she pisses me off, she likes it when she's conquered." That's the pithy man talk. Stacy seemed like Arabella in front of Kieran, and after what was said, Evie felt like a complete fool who, knowing nothing about the man, managed to judge and, worse, instruct. How many times had Stacy berated herself for her language? To keep your mouth shut. Stacy tried to see less of Kieran. Stacy seemed innocent, but it was scary to look Kieran in the eye. And he'd come over, clean the lot, fix up the house. Of course they met, and Stacy's heart sank, but she didn't have the courage to talk. Who would she ask for advice? Wilkie, of course. It had been a while since they'd gossiped. It's time. Stacy spilled every last drop. She didn't hide anything. Wilkie didn't see what the problem was. Any competition? Any takers? No competitors. If you don't like it, you like it. Too much. Girl, I don't understand you. You go off to the middle of nowhere and stumble upon a prince. What's wrong? The prince's horse is dead, and he can't get there on foot. Do I have to propose to him myself? No. Wait a minute. I'll come back in a couple of weeks, and we'll decide what to do. Vincent said conquered how, with the whole estate dug up, the fence repaired, the taps and locks in good order. What else is there to do? In response, silence. All decent, polite, and indifferent. It's no use consulting Vincent. He's already making fun of him. Kieran's pouring out his heart to him, and Petrenko's watching. He's laughing, and he can tell he can barely contain himself from laughing. Alex, do you think it's funny? I'm in front of him, and he's laughing. Yeah, laughing. There's a big guy sitting there and he can't say something about how he feels to a woman he likes. Of course it's funny to you. You got a wife, kids. I want a wife too, by the way, and not just any wife, but a very specific one. You're Vincent, of course, and I'm a boxer. If I hold on now, I risk getting my nose punched. My friend Kieran, when was the last time you climbed into a woman's window? What's windows got to do with it? There are parallels. It's got nothing to do with windows. It's all about the woman. Okay, you're the thin, ironic one. I'm thick, straightforward. Probably dumb, too. I don't get your parable about the windows. Are you hinting? I'm not hinting at the window. Romanticism is the way to go. You shouldn't climb through the window, of course. The result is predictable, either a night in jail or a black eye from a frying pan. Giving flowers is also not an option in our realities. What's Kieran gonna do? Bring her a drugstore chamomile? A rose from Auntie Esmeralda? There's no movie theaters or restaurants. Look, I never realized we were so bad at romance. Vincent sighed. Not much else, and we haven't come up with anything in 3 weeks. Alex's wife, Nelly, ironically in her maiden name of Goncharova, had been eavesdropping for a long time. What are the men talking about? My God, what primitive creatures they are. It is good that God first created them, and then, looking at his creation, decided to improve it. And the result was a woman she resented. When Nelly realized that the men were at an impasse, she decided to intervene. What the hell are flowers? Invite them to a dance at the club. Let the youngsters beat it. Buy a ring and go to propose. And if she says no, of course she'll say no. It would be strange if she agreed to marry me out of the blue. But she'll think about it, start evaluating the pros and cons. And what does that mean? That you, Kieran, will always be in her thoughts, and she won't be able to think of anything else. Only you. Isn't that what you want? Natasha, do you think it will work? Kieran hesitated. It worked for Andrew. Which Andrew, this one or that one? This one, I guess. It doesn't matter, as long as it worked. While Kieran was devising a plan to win Stacy over, she had an unexpected visitor. Vincent had arrived. Stacy was overjoyed. A family man, Alex's son. A reminder of happiness past. Vincent came with the express purpose of persuading Stacy to move back to the city. I've put the apartment on the market. Half of it's yours. Obviously, you can't get the same one, but you're going back to the city, he said. Vince, I would never claim my dad's apartment. We have our own place, Stacy said. But Mom's got a thing for this place. Why are you the main target? I get it. She can't get back at Dad anymore. She's taking it out on you. Vince, why sell? I mean, she was going to live there. She started renovations. She started renovations and she's done with them. Her goal was to torment you, and you just left. It's ruined, Vincent said. She doesn't need this apartment without you. Dima, I'm not going back to the city. Maybe someday, but not now, Stacy said. We'll go for a walk in the countryside. You'll see it's not a shithole at all. Look at my plot of land. I could use the money from the sale of the apartment. I really want a bathhouse. Dimka, how glad I am to see you. And how did you find me? Millie cracked. I won't say. But I thought there's another husband on the way. She didn't even give me a hint. Vincent grinned. Dim, are you coming for a couple days, or are you staying with me? Evie stood in the doorway. Stacy, Dad wants to know if you're coming over for dinner. We've got a guest. I'll go tell him it's dinner for 4, Evie said, and ran off. Sveta, I think I'll stay with you, don't you? Vincent asked. Yes, of course you can. But this girl is the neighborhood boxing champion, so be careful. The village has long since realized what's going on. It's just that these young men can't make up their minds. They're city folk. All those who had their sights on Kieran realized that they were out of luck and nobly stepped aside. I wanted to make a scene, of course. She came here, stole the only decent man, but what was the use? He didn't pay much attention to their charms without her. But you can tell him you loved him so much, but you let him go. Be happy. Noble. Kieran couldn't think of anything romantic to do. Everything seemed fine without the romance. Vincent's arrival somehow made it almost like a family. Lunches and dinners together, conversations over tea. Vincent didn't want to leave the house until almost midnight. And that was good for Kieran. Andrew and Nayli nudged Kieran. Don't be silent. She may not love you yet, but she's definitely interested. If you don't ask, you won't know. And Stacy has a visitor again. And what a guest. Millie's here. Millie's not just visiting, she's on a rescue mission to help her friend who's been missing. It seems Mila had an important event in her life that she wasn't in a hurry to tell her friends about. Her main goal was to help Stacy get back in touch with Kieran. We don't need a prince without a horse. We'll only look at the prince, Millie said after their first dinner together. Sveta, he can't take his eyes off you. He's a gorgeous man. I'm not talking about looks. There's nothing to talk about. He's so monumental in terms of character. A real counselor. Take a good look. You'll never meet another like him. What am I telling you? You know it. But for some reason you're stalling, or rather he's stalling. Well, it doesn't matter. You can push it. Millie, why don't you say something? Are you getting married? Come on, spill the beans, Vincent asked. Millie was indeed getting married. She assured him that she had no mercantile interests in the marriage. Knowing her friend, Stacy doubted that. The fact that she had been introduced to her future husband by her ex-husband suggested something. If it was an artist or a poet, one could believe in pure love without regard for money. But the fate of Millie decided to arrange her second husband, and in his entourage of people who believe in selfless love, there were no. He invited Millie to a pathos reception, where she met a young and handsome businessman, who coincidentally turned out to be unmarried. Now, Millie was doing everything she could to change his single status to married. Millie, besides being single, do you know anything about him? Young, good-looking, rich. What else is there to know? Stacy asked. Well, he's not that young. Do you know exactly how rich he is? Or did someone tell you? He's a businessman. So he's got money. Anyway, I know he's good-looking, Millie joked. Look, you're not a stupid woman, and you're not poor, by the way. I never thought you were someone's prey. You can't even tell me what his business is. What, he never told you? Why didn't you ask? You've always been 3 steps ahead. What happened now? I can't believe you're blinded by mad passion, Stacy said doubtfully. I've never met your businessman, but at his age and his money, you can't be lonely. Millie, are you saying he's a con man? I'm afraid he's an Alfonso. Honey, that's just my impression. I'm not insisting, but take a closer look. Don't be so quick to jump into the deep end. You've already taken the plunge twice. Kieran kept trying to talk to Stacy alone. It wasn't working. It's easy to say, don't be quiet, say it was Joshua, or Vincent following her around. And now Millie was in the way. There was a time and place, of course, but Kieran didn't look for it. He was afraid that if she didn't say anything, there was a chance she'd say no, and he'd have to step aside. And then how to live. One evening, when Joshua and Vincent had gone to the club and Millie had tactfully withdrawn, Kieran made up his mind. Stacy, you can see I like you. You don't have to say anything. If you say you're so nice but I don't want to hear it. I told you so you'd know. You already knew. Now you know for sure. Think it's up to you. Roma, I don't know what to say, Stacy replied, confused. It's good that you don't know, but I have something to ask. Or rather, advice. Kieran gave her daughter a shocked look. He'd raised her to be an athlete, a champion, and suddenly she said she wanted to be a lawyer. Why all of a sudden? All that hard work, all that training, all that success. Now it's all for nothing. And she won't listen to anything. I got a job on vacation as an assistant at a law firm. I drive every morning to the neighborhood of law offices. Since September, I've been enrolled in pre-law classes. I'm determined to go to law school. What do you want her to do? Become a champion? Then what? Ever wonder how your daughter will live after she finishes, no matter how brilliant her athletic career, with no education, no family, no kids? Stacy said, Don't tell me you can do it all. You know you can't. Your daughter is wiser than you are. Don't let her get in the way. Stacy and Kieran had no way of having a romantic conversation, almost quarreling. Stacy decided to consult Millie. If her decision was firm, Stacy would back her up and Dad couldn't resist the two of them. Kieran couldn't think of anything romantic to do. He suspected Pushkin was mocking, but the idea of climbing through the window kept coming up. What do you mean romantic? Well, it's like a magic wand Digit's wedding. Kieran was preparing for Digit's wedding as if it were his own. He was even more excited. What's a newlywed couple to worry about? They've got it all figured out. He had total uncertainty. The wedding was a village wedding. Neighbors dragged pickles, homemade sausage, roasted chickens, compotes to Digit's house. The men had built a table for half a yard and benches to match. Digit's girlfriends made up riddles for the bride price and contests. Stacy was invited to the wedding, but she refused when she saw their tasks for the groom merely crossing the boundaries of propriety. How did you guys have fun in the city? We have the internet. We see your flowery jokes. We don't expose our lips and other body parts. We don't change sex. That's embarrassing. And we're just having fun, the bridesmaids parried. The wedding was epochal. On the bride's side was one village, on the groom's side another. The bride has a richer village, and the groom has stronger men. The fight did not happen, although earlier the saying "what wedding without a fight" was relevant. The bride justified the nickname Monkey, then grabbed the hem of her mother's lush dress, then hung on Alexa. Contests, jokes, toasts, songs, dances, people were having a lot of fun. Not often in the village there are events of such scale. They say that if the guests sing a lot at a wedding, the life of young people will be cheerful and happy. Now there will be enough talk for a month they will retell who did and said what. The heroes of these stories will say, it never happened. Maybe it didn't. It doesn't matter. And the annals of the village has already been entered, and with each retelling will be added new colorful details. If this omen works, then Digit and Alex will be the happiest people in the world. They'll also laugh on and off. Vince, the accordion player, played all night with a drink break. Did he have time for an appetizer? No, the people demanded songs. They sang the most heartfelt ones. There are so many golden lights, oh Kalina blossoms on the Morom Road. And of course Vladimirsky Central. And Central sounded especially heartfelt, although there were no prisoners in the village. Due to the fact that Vince did not have time to snack, in 3 hours we were left without an accordion. The young people rejoiced. At last we can turn on some normal music. Of course they did, but after about 10 minutes the older ones demanded, turn off this crap and turn on something soulful. The guys didn't know what was soulful for them, so they turned on disco 80s. They got it right. Even those who never got up from a chair went dancing. To the song "Where the Maple Trees Are Noisy," Kieran walked up to Stacy and held out his hand. On the river wave. Stacy put her hand on Kieran's shoulder. Talked about love with you, she thought. They were dancing. Kieran thought, this is romance, and then suddenly it sounded, love is like a dream, it's gone. What do you mean it's gone? It hasn't started yet. Wrong song, he thought. No, it was the maple trees noisy. Stacy's heart sank. She wanted to tell her love so badly, but it seemed like a man should be the first to say. Kieran didn't talk about love, but he did say he'd take a step after her. No, I can't take that step. Why don't you say something, you chump with no feelings? Stacy chastised herself. The wedding was in full swing. There was singing and dancing, and Stacy suddenly remembered her and Alex. She remembered the wedding without longing, without hopelessness, with sadness, sorrow, and gratitude. For the first time since Alex's death, thinking about him was just a bright memory. But the tears did come. To avoid spoiling people's holiday, Stacy got up from the table, walked out of the courtyard, and walked toward the river. She didn't want to let go of her thoughts about Alex. The stinging sadness didn't hurt anymore. Stacy felt like Alex was letting her go. It was as if Mila had heard a voice. Go on living, be happy. Don't rush back to me, I'll wait. Kieran followed Stacy, but Millie stopped him. Don't let her be alone. She's saying goodbye to the past. Don't bother her. Millie didn't let Kieran go, she followed. That's it, she realized. Stacy's not going back to town. Her fate is a bit stymied here, but she's not going anywhere, Millie thought. That's what makes her so short-tempered. She deserves such a trustworthy man. What's her bad luck? She's always getting some fake prince. I just want to be loved. I guess to be loved, you have to love yourself. Fate is like a boomerang. It gives you what you put into the world. Stacy knows how to love, but Kieran is still calculating and guessing. I guess he miscalculated, Millie pondered. Well, what are we young and beautiful? We've got time for more. Millie found Stacy. She was sitting on the bank, looking out at the slow river. Millie sat down beside her and put her arm around her. Don't be sad, girlfriend. Say, are you going back? Not right now. The school year's just started. I can't just quit. It's a bit scary, of course. How will I live here in winter? But other people live here. They won't let you go to waste. Of course they won't. Especially a big one like that, Millie laughed. It's so funny to look at you. It's like Beauty and the Beast. The Beast is very handsome, though, and he can't take his eyes off you. Millie, what the hell do I want? I can't get Alex back. Does Kieran love me? Why do I get such great men? What's wrong with you? You're a bit hasty on the get part. Millie, what am I supposed to do? I like Kieran. Joshua wants his daddy. He's doing everything he can to push him. Vince has joined us. He's been here for 2 days. He's been staying for 2 weeks. It all makes sense. I like it. I don't get it. Honey, I can't just tell him I love him. He's healthy. He's strong. He's not afraid of anyone but me. Nothing. We'll get through the winter, and then we'll see. I'm going home tomorrow. I came to save you, but there's no one to save you from. I'm going to deal with my businessman and my ex-husband at the same time. Kieran glanced furtively at Stacy, though he wanted to look at her without stopping. He thought that fate had given him a chance to be happy again by sending this wonderful woman, but there was no way he dared to accept this gift. Fate might get angry. What could be easier, a hug, a kiss, to tell her how much I love her, he pondered. On Nayli's advice, he even bought a ring, even though he thought it was foolish. Stacy thought it was impossible to step into the same river twice. She was already happy with Alex and wouldn't be able to love like that again. But love has to be different. With the experience of troubles and mistakes, she decided. Millie's friend is right, Stacy does have luck with men. Fate has kept her from making mistakes. They say fate doesn't choose, but gives you a chance not to make mistakes. I didn't make a mistake with Alex and I won't forget him. Just as Kieran will never forget his wife. We have similar destinies. One grief for both of us. Then happiness must be shared, Stacy thought. She hoped that if Kieran didn't dare to speak, their shared happiness might not happen. Come on, Kieran, say something, she mentally pleaded. Kieran didn't say anything. Kieran did. He hugged Stacy, kissed her, and pulled a ring box from his pocket. Stacy, will you marry me? He asked. Stacy was confused. There was such a look of bewilderment on her face that Kieran laughed. That's exactly the reaction I was expecting, he said. That's what Nayli said. What Nayli before Pushkin said that. You'll say no, but you'll think about it. Or will you not refuse? I know it's foolish to hope you'll say yes right away. But you'll take the ring. You'll look at it and think of me. Stacy smiled enigmatically and pressed herself tighter against Kieran. She thought to herself that she was already thinking about him.